Good morning again, good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Portfolio Unconference 2025. This year's theme is building scalable businesses. We have top voices in tech. We have top voices from experts in tech in Africa, from fundraising to ecosystem trends, compliance and legal, AI and automation, ready to share their insights with you. We're super excited to see you. Please type in the chat where you're dialing in from. Would like to know who is in the room, where you're calling from, and if possible, the year you graduated from MEST. Ashwin is dialing in from the same room as Wendy and I in Osu. He's yet to graduate MEST. We are in our new office in Borough. Alfred, 2017. Neville, 2017. Paul, 2023. So we have people from Nairobi, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Angola, South Africa. It's so good to see you all. Class of 2024 repping, class of 2022, 2017. Oh, we have Phoenix, Arizona. It's good to see you, Tino. Thank you for joining. It's so good to see you all. For those who are not yet camera ready, please try and get camera ready. It'll be good for us to take a nice group selfie at the end of the unconference so we can post on our socials and let all those who didn't join feel a bit of FOMO. Without further ado, we'd like to get started with the agenda for today. We would start off with a welcome address by Ashwin. Ashwin is a man who needs no introduction. I would let him come up in a few seconds to welcome everyone and tell them what we have lined up for today. Over to you, Ashwin.
So first of all, I think good afternoon, good morning, and yeah, I think good afternoon. I think Kenya is probably the furthest time zone we have today. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. Neville, I can see Jesse from Asoriba. I can see Shepherd. I can see Adama. I can see Tino, who's coming in all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm sure there's more people joining. I think following last year's success with the MEST portfolio on conference, we decided that we probably should be doing more of these, especially because this is purely a virtual event catered for our alumni, our old founders, our current founders, everyone. So I think this is more or less a gathering for us to take what I would call a status check on what's really happening in the African ecosystem. Obviously, we have people like Dario, who is now not just representing Africa, but also South America and India. So obviously getting his worldwide, I think, wisdom is going to be awesome. We have an old alumni, Adelaide, who's coming in to talk about marketing, AI, and automation, which I'm super pumped about. Then we have our new partners, Funmi from Templars, which is probably the leading legal organization today in Africa. They've supported so many startups through so many different transactions. And I have personally worked with them on 2 ventures and now starting to work with them on the 3rd venture. So very excited to have Templars and Funmi and everyone here as well. And finally, we have Nick from Renew Capital. And Renew Capital is someone who we have recently met and have a lot of respect for. They've been doing incredible work in East Africa. And I think now we're really looking at how we can build this out and really support this also going forward. So yeah, I don't want to keep you guys away from the action for too long. I think what I would probably recommend is everyone just hold on to your seats. We have an action-packed next couple of hours, and people can be dipping in and out. You can hear a lot of different perspectives, hear a lot of different things which are happening on the continent. And yeah, really excited to see all of you here. And if you are in touch with other alumni on different groups, just drop them the link. They don't need to formally register. You can just drop the link, get them to come in. I know we always in MEST start off with a slow number, but we end strong. But for these kind of sessions, it's hoping that we can start strong and also end strong. But thanks a lot for joining, guys. Really miss all of you, and hopefully to catch you guys somewhere along the circuit in the upcoming year.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashwin, for that. We'll get right into it. Like he said, we will start strong and hopefully end strong as well. So the first session is going to be 2024 in review and key tech trends for 2025, and is led by Dario. Dario is the founder and managing director of Brighter Bridges, a leading business intelligence and research firm focused on underserved markets and serving over 100 investors and corporate and institutional clients. Prior to Brighter, Dario worked at the crossroads of research, finance, and technology with organizations such as British International Investments, the GSMA, and Oxford University-based Commission Pathways for Prosperity. So I'd like to hand over to Dario now. Dario, please unmute, share your screen, and lead us through the first session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. It was very sweet to the MEST cohort. I think we're coming to 10 years since I first encountered MEST in Accra. So it's very nice to see you all and see how far the program has gone and how many people have actually gone through the program. My name is Dario, as Benna said, and thanks Ashwin also for the intro. I think some of you have seen some of my team present in previous events. This presentation is actually going to have some of the data from our latest report, which is the end of the year report. So the data is pretty fresh, and I will go through some of the core insights from it, and I've left some time for questions because I tend to usually have quite a few clarification points from the different entrepreneurs. And then obviously also feel free to depart from the core topic of the presentation in case you have questions around just the ecosystem, the journey that I've gone through Brighter and what I've seen in the last decade working across the ecosystem. But I'll share the screen right now. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, so today's reflection on African investment landscape in a fast-changing world. It's over the last few weeks and months, Brighter started to be kind of the forefront of what's happening around the world. And we're working on a number of. Obviously, we have the data on the ecosystem and the deal flow and the activity. We're trying to also understand what happens on the outside, and this is also the reason why I've and how we can read the different insights of the ecosystem in light of what's happening, and that's how I also named the presentation "Reflection on Africa's Investment Landscape in a Fast-Changing World." I'm trying to offer some like reading keys. Brighter about us, as Benna said, we've been around for 7 years, even though the magazine actually started in 2016, and then became what Brighter is right now. We're now global. We're operating in Latin America and Asia as well, and we work with over like 100 clients in like basically from Peru to Tokyo, and we work with private public sector, and the core data that we have is actually lies in the Brighter Intelligence, which is largely freely accessible for founders. So this is actually maybe a slide that I'll discuss at the very end, because it's part of that conversation that we're trying to lead right now on what happens in Africa and how to read what happens across the continent. So here are 10 insights from the Africa Investment Report, which is our flagship publication. It's probably the publication that gets the highest number of reads of what we do. Without further ado, here is how we start. I am usually against having short-term perspectives when we look at Africa, because Africa is a continent. It's not just a market, is composed of several markets, subnational and national markets, and that are very diverse. And so, it's several countries, several political systems, several different contexts. And I know there's this umbrella term that is Africa, and we tend to kind of analyze things under this umbrella term, but it's very important that we also distinguish and we put things in perspective of the last 10 years. So the first insight is actually taking a step back and be like, okay, how has the market evolved across the continent, and what are the data saying? Especially in light of what's happening around the funding winter conversation, whether the ecosystem is doing well or not. So funding appears to be dropping, but longer time series data show something different. What do the time series show? Over the last decade, there has been a market in the making. The sharp drop appears between 2021, 2022, and 2020, 21, and 22. But if you actually, our theory is that because in 2020, COVID interrupted a lot of the business activity, if you actually take a piece of this investment from 2021 and you put it into 2020, which is likely what happened because a lot of the activity was deferred to the year later and the year after, you can basically draw a straight line that is a growing story, right? And even 2022, 2023, 2024 present a slight decrease for a number of reasons, which we'll analyze later. But if you still compare a decade ago, and even like the numbers before 2015 are even sort of grimmer than they're now, you can see that the ecosystem has undergone a number of phases, right? A momentum where VC started appearing on the continent, a breakout moment where larger funding, exits, IPOs, America and the Gulf and Asia and European funding entering the continent bullish about what African ventures had to offer. And then COVID struck. There was a reconfiguration of valuations. Some of the companies started going bust. Many of the models proved basically not necessarily strong. There was a whole adjustment, and where we are now is a moment where we're still multiple of funding compared to 10 years ago, but the numbers present slightly less sort of promising numbers compared to the last couple of years. But it's very important usually to analyze the market in its complexity and in for its history, right? I am not obliged to present a positive story. So I'm not trying to craft a positive narrative because I have any vested interest in showing a positive narrative. We're very allowed at Brighter. We're an independent agency. We're not funded by any specific actor that tells us that we need to tell everyone that the funding information is the funding trends are positive. So what we observe is not necessarily a positive or negative trend, but we ask people to basically take a 10, 20 years time frame and look at how the market has been created. Because I always say a couple of bad days don't make you a bad person, right? Equally, like a couple of bad years don't make you a bad market. There are a number of reasons, and we'll see how some of the reasons that I'll go through in a second affect these numbers quite strikingly, and they don't determine necessarily a trend, meaning very specific companies attract super-sized deals, and just the 2-3 companies raising super-sized deals make the overall funding landscape look much more funded than it actually is. And so this is something that we'll observe in a second. In general, you can see that we have analyzed both the value of deals and the number of deals over time, and you can see that there has been a consistent growth over time. What's the second insight? Basically, over the last 10 years, we went from effectively a map that had no colors to a map that is quite significantly color and well distributed. And again, this is not just in terms of total funding figure, but also number of deals, meaning activities that is happening, meaning we've analyzed data for what they were worth in terms of value, and we analyzed deals where $100 million deal and $1,000 deal are valued the same. And you can see that there has been a sharp increase in the geographical diversification. When we started, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa were basically the top. Some happening in the Maghreb, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria have been always at the forefront of IT. Historically, they are very well known for like good training in IT, so they've always stood out. But then in terms of volume, they've not necessarily like made significant progress over the years. But what you can see is a sharp increase from basically a non-distributed capital allocation to a pretty distributed. Obviously, there's Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, Ghana, Tanzania, Uganda, the Maghreb being still like tier 1, tier 2 markets. And then there's a number of markets that are basically tagging along by way of companies expanding to these markets. So companies that are headquartered maybe in what we call the big four or the innovation diamond, right? That expand to neighboring countries. This is usually like the first factor for that determines basically this market to access more capital. So this is, this infographic basically explains itself. Third insight. As much as geographically we've seen diversification, we've also seen diversification from a perspective of sectors and products. What do I mean by this? Fintech still leads, and a lot of the funding that has gone into other sectors such as agri, climate, mobility, health, has actually seen a lot of embedded finance model, meaning a lot of the companies at growth stage that have been active in logistics, in asset, in clean tech, climate tech, in agri, have actually basically raised for their kind of pay-as-you-go models, for the lending model, asset finance model. But what we have seen also has been a pretty strong diversification towards other sector. What has been driving this has been a specific sector specialization from a part of investors from early to late stage. What has happened is that there's been a growing number of investors active in very specific sub-segment of the market, following a growing interest in really specializing to make sure that to effectively raise the chances of their portfolio to find consistency and success. So you've seen climate tech funds, you've seen fintech funds, you've seen healthcare funds, and this has been what's basically been driving the course. And this especially, MEST is an example. Especially what's happening is that at the early stage, and we'll see it in the following slides, there has been a lot of growth in terms of numbers at the early stage, meaning many more funds, many more vehicles, many more accelerators have grown. And not only they've grown in numbers, but they've also grown in the numbers of cohorts they have and the number of members and participants in their cohort. And this is what's been driving early stage. And this is what's been driving the number of deals in all these other sectors. Insight 4, this is probably one of the most important changing and shifts to the ecosystem of the last, say, half decade. What we've seen is basically a shift in the narrative and the conversation around what capital needs to be injected in the ecosystem and what for, meaning funds and companies have started readjusting the conversation around whether equity, which has been the dominant and it remains obviously the dominant vehicle and instrument for funding ventures, is the appropriate instrument as a one size fits all. And the conversation has gone towards identifying different types of financing, such as debt, such as grants, and also blended finance, in a way to accommodate basically very specific business models. We'll see it in the next slide. But basically what has happened is that, especially models where companies have shown traction and revenues, companies that have shown traction and revenue, they started looking into debt as a way to avoid diluting the founders and complicating the cap table and effectively try to fund some of their operations or some of their initiatives through different types of instrument. And one of these is debt. So we've actually done a showcase and a report on that. What was it? I think a year and a half ago, we released a piece on debt financing in Africa, and we identified basically about $2 billion being disclosed in debt over the last decade, basically. And these are some of the companies that we've identified. And as you can see, this goes back to the point that I made when I discussed sectors. Many of the companies that have been raising debt have been raising debt for lending, asset financing, and credit models that they had. And these credit models and asset finance have actually been applied to very different, not necessarily very different, but a number of sectors. So clean tech, mobility, agriculture. And so embedded finance has become quite a strong topic in the financing space, especially as going hand in hand with sector specialization, financial instrument specialization, and business model specialization. This is the point I made earlier around the larger cohorts and the presence of more funding and specialized funding. As you can see, this is maybe a bit of a complicated slide to understand, so let me know later if you need more clarity. Basically, what we are seeing here is that the number of deals at early stage over the last few years, which are the years where people have started saying that there has been a funding winter, has actually grown in numbers. And this means that there's been an increasing investment from the financing world into basically pushing the new pipeline, right, at the very early stage. What has happened is that we've seen a contraction at later stage funding. And the assumption is that we are witnessing what we call a sort of a compressed middle, right? A squeezed middle at seed to Series A. Because the assumption is that fundamentally companies that have broken that ceiling of getting to like Series A then have the resources to then go out internationally and access that financing in the Gulf, in Europe, in the United States. And so what we've witnessed, and one of the reasons why we are also seeing this kind of problematic conversation around funding that middle layer, like seed to Series A, is exactly that we've seen growth in a specific. It's not because there's seen a growth that there's a problem, but we've not seen a proportionate growth in that level of funding there, even though recently this has become quite a big topic for funders, and I'm hearing a lot of investors trying to enter the market at that stage. The result for this, ideally, it's not guaranteed, but is ideally should lead over the next few years to the ecosystem to have many more basically investable companies because of the massive investment that is happening in all direction at early stage. And this is what this slide is basically trying to explain. As you can see, there has been a contraction of super late stage compared to maybe the last few years. And this is something that is no news. Everyone is seeing what is happening. A lot of companies going bust. Many of the funds, international funds, have not come back to invest in companies, and so this is what's caused the contraction from a overall number perspective. But this is not the full story, right? Recently, I've been trying to explain this by saying that there are multiple realities that can be true, right? It is true that there is a funding winter from a perspective, but this funding winter doesn't apply to everything. This funding winter applies to a very specific subsegment of the market, whereas there's a lot of opportunities, especially at early stage. And if here I'm talking to a lot of, and maybe it's just a hopeful word here for early stage founders, there is capital at early stage. Especially super early stage, so pre-seed, angel. I have a slide on angel investment at the end. And it's very important to not lose hope or not misunderstand the news out there, because different pockets of the market attract different pockets of funding and respond to different dynamics and different rules of the game, right? So yes, there may be a decrease in capital allocation in certain areas of the market, but this doesn't apply to everything and everywhere. And in fact, the story goes, there is more funding available in different geographies than it was before. And there is more specialized funding available to founders from both an investor perspective, not just both, sectoral perspective, demographic perspective, like we'll see in a second, and financial instrument wise. This is something that I think needs to be very clear in the mind of early stage founder. Sixth insight. So this is what I was trying to clarify at the very beginning around, let's not be misled by the numbers, by the overall numbers, because over the last decade, the top 10 deals have consistently represented more than 50% of total funding allocated to like the whole ecosystem. Okay, this means that 10 deals consistently have been more than 50% of represented more than 50% of total funding, representing a tiny percentage of all activities that actually happen. What does this mean? And we'll see in the next slide. It means that when two companies like Zeps and say OPay together combined raise $800 million, that slide that I showed earlier, that initial bar, they're likely to influence this bar quite significantly. But we are talking about two companies out of over 1,000, right? This is the numbers for 2024, which was here, right? Over the last few years, there have been over 1,000 deals been done on the continent. So we shouldn't be misled by the charts, because it's very easy to create a narrative. This is very important. It's something that we try at Brighter to put forward as something to understand. Misreading charts as misreading information is very easy. And if people are easy at are good at building narratives, they are likely to influence the story. Okay, where are we? I don't know if anyone is. I don't know if anyone is drawing stuff. Yeah, I think it's from the admin side. But I think this is something that is very important for me, and it's a message that I try to put forward every time I do analysis and I explain our data, because it's very easy to create a narrative that is misleading and it's not actually like following the right, like creating the right story based on the data. And you can create all sorts of stories with the data, right? Case in point is Insight 7. Many of the companies that have, in fact, most of the companies that have raised over $100 million in Africa have not just raised $100 million for Africa. They've usually raised millions of dollars that have been dedicated to the different operations that they've had. And so here, the color coding shows the markets where all of these companies operate. And these are the companies that have raised over $100 million. You can see them here in $100 million club in the next slide. And so it's very important to understand that even when we declare like a $300 million raise in Africa, like Zipline, for instance, the $300 million are not going to go to Africa necessarily. They're going to be spread across the different markets, right? And so even the numbers that we then put out at the end of the year, they need to be investigated, need to be analyzed in the context. At Brighter, we always provide this context. So if you read our report, we'll always have the caveats, we'll always have the disclaimers. But it's very important, because if you see just an infographic without context, you're not going to be able to discern basically what the methodological biases and flaws are there. You can ask me any questions you want afterwards, but these are 2 points that are very important for us and for anyone who reads our data. This is just an eye candy for you guys to see basically the $100 million club, and then we took the companies that have raised basically between $99 million below all the way 50 companies that have raised from 99 below, in a descending order, and this is why we call this the next 50 club. Okay, I'll share the presentation so you'll be able to see all of these, but also these are directly taken from the African Investment Report, so you'll also be able to download. I'll share the link later, and it's for free. Is it number 8? As I said, founders are now got access to more specialized funding from a sector's perspective, more specialized funding from a financial instrument perspective, and also more specialized funding from a gender and demographic perspective. It's not news. All women teams have raised less historically, and this is due to several reasons, and also to this corresponds to a global trend. So this is not necessarily just happening on the African continent. But an interesting story, two interesting stories are the sectors where all women teams have raised the highest number of amount of funding and number of deals are what we call high impact sectors. So we're more likely to find female founders active as in education, agtech, health, e-commerce, because the commerce is very broad from personal care to fashion. But it's more likely to find to find companies founded by female founders that have raised capital in these sectors than specifically maybe like a logistic company. Okay. The other story is there's an increasing number of funds that are specifically dedicated to female founders and also local founders, as we'll see in the next slide. This is a conversation that for those who were there 10 years ago when the ecosystem started pushing became very important, because what was happening is that a lot of the leading companies, especially in East Africa, were led by kind of like Ivy League rich white kids, effectively. And there was an infographic that went out on Twitter, and that sparked a lot of conversations around where capital in Africa was actually being allocated and what to do about it. This is the slide that actually shows what happened over the last decade. Brighter has demographic data for founders for thousands of companies. So we've basically run the numbers in there, and here you have it. And then finally, as I said, there's not just more specialized funding. Maybe these are like the 4 or 5 points that I should have started the conversation with. What are the 4 or 5 points for founders, especially because of a chat to an audience like this? If we are to answer a question, what are the things that early stage founders can look out for, right, in a moment like this, irrespective of whether there's a funding winter or not? What can they look for? We've looked at, first, do not lose hope, because the ecosystem in Africa has grown significantly over the last 10 years. Second, there's more access to fire capital, even in geographies where 5-10 years ago there was absolutely zero funding available. 3, sector specific capital is now pushing basically the boundaries of what used to happen before, where there was a lack of expertise from the founder side, and so founders were just raising but wouldn't have access to specialized expertise in a specific industry. Financial instrument, the right financial instrument for the right business model and sector. Demographic care from the funder side, so funds that are dedicated to specific subset of the market in terms of demographic groups. And then finally, from a stage perspective, as you've seen before, early stage funding is actually growing in numbers and in size. It's not just from the side of the funds, it's also from the side of the angel community. Brighter has been doing a study on this for the last 4 years, and we've been analyzing hundreds of deals, and we've been investigating hundreds of angel investors. And we've done this with ABAN, we've done this with the African Angel Academy, we've done this in combination with many of the syndicates and communities. Angel investors are an extremely virtuous sort of element that helps the community, especially the early stage. They come with less frills and sort of condition attached than funds, and they can probably also dedicate specific time to early stage founders as boards or as advisors or just as ambassador of the companies they invest in. And they also add sort of gravitas to each company they invest in, because obviously they usually not necessarily high net worth individual, but usually probably work in finance, or they work in industry that have some degree of respect, and they can actually contribute from a technical perspective and from a network perspective to the founders that they help, especially first-time founders. So these are the 10 insights. Go back to the first slide because it's something that has been doing my head in lately. Thinking just specifically about the ecosystem in Africa and not more broadly about what Africa as a whole has actually been attracting. And so I decided to break down the financial flows into Africa over the last 20 years. And what you see is that brighter data, which you see is how you say, it's an upward trend. On this slide looks like basically a pale gray, not really upward line, right? And then we looked at the second line, which is foreign direct investment, not necessarily just in the ecosystem. And we've seen that has been a consistent line. There's also seen a spike. Actually, this is actually very telling, I think, because FDI has also had a spike like the ecosystem has had right after COVID, right? And so if you just compare the FDI line with the ecosystem line, you can see that there has been basically a similar trend. The third line is overseas development assistance, which is development money into and infrastructure money from the public sector and philanthropic sector into the continent. And it's been an upward trend historically. And I just want to also clarify that USAID was a $40 billion entity with probably 10 of that amount going to Africa. Now, if you see the numbers here, you can see that even USAID crumbling does not have necessarily like a systemic impact on Africa, even if in the short term it does create a massive problem. He also opens up an opportunity, actually, an interesting conversation to have with especially local like business people on the continent that discuss the opportunity that the vacuum of USAID is actually leaving on the continent. And then the fourth line is remittances, which is to date the biggest source of external funding on the continent. We're talking 40 times the amounts here than the VC space is attracting. And every single line is an upward trend, okay, over the last 20 years. I also built another slide, but I didn't put it here because I'm still working on it, that actually shows the revenues of the top 100 companies on the continent. And also that's another positive story. So it's very important for me that especially founders that enter the world of running a business right now where everything seems to be conflicting. America is just attracting a lot of media attention right now. So it looks like the world is going to basically crumble. Like actually have access to alternative sources of information that show maybe a broader context and attach data to it, because everything I've just shared is data. There's nothing political about what I'm saying. I have no problem saying that there's less funding and that people that have gambled doing money in the VC space have also ended up losing money. But it's very important that people try to have different perspectives, try to sort of have access to different data in a context like this analysis, for instance. That is very easy to access. This is all the information that is publicly available, ODA, FDI, ODA, and remittances, and then Brighter now is available as well. I will pause here. I don't even know what time it is. Yeah, I think I'm on the dot on 45. As I said, a lot of the information is on Brighter Intelligence. Thank you everyone for having me, and feel free to ask me any questions.
Thank you very much for that data-driven presentation, Dario. If anyone has any question, you can either raise up your hand, type it in the chat, or simply unmute and ask Dario directly. We'll just wait for a few more minutes in case anyone has any question. In the meantime, Adelaide, can you please get ready for your session?
I think I have a question.
Please go ahead, Nana.
So, I follow very deeply as this presentation was going on. It's an amazing one. Thanks so much for that. I wanted to find out. I know there's a lot of there's a new source of financing that has to do with crowdfunding happening, particularly in Nigeria, taking the lead, and I learned that Tunisia also things happening there. Let's say Morocco yesterday, and I was trying to dive into like, can you talk a bit about what you find, Dario, in that space? Is it gathering steam? I know in Nigeria it had a very bad reputation because of some failed events, but do you have any content on or data on that? Thank you.
Yeah, actually, yes. I've seen many. We actually did a study on crowdfunding platform back in the day. What I would say is it's pretty straightforward. I always say that when you're in a small village, every death is very loud, right? In a small ecosystem, every death is loud. You be in a village, or us talking about company going bust in an ecosystem, but equally on the other end, and this includes the case of crowdfunding successes or failures. But in a world where the financial system works, like Europe or the US, crowdfunding platform have actually been an extremely established source of capital for founders for decades. Okay, what has happened on the continent is that the fact that the financial system is not regulated and the obsession with trying to finding access to capital has also led to sort of nascent experiment that right until now might have not necessarily I wouldn't even say it being successful, because there are a ton of successful stories about crowdfunding, but maybe like being newsworthy, and so they're less accessible to founders from a perspective of information access and scale, and also diversification in terms of markets. Because the United States is one country, the European Commission is effectively a shared market, and India is a individual market, right? So when you look at the crowdfunding stories in these markets, you will see that they are shared and they're international. Africa does not share financial systems between countries. Countries have different currencies, countries have different regulations. Even the African Union or Afrexim Bank, there are entities that are trying to push for cross-border trade. They're still struggling quite a lot. So what we've seen has been pockets of experiments in different countries that might have not reached the scale and the fame that organization and just the volumes that we've seen maybe in the United States, or we've seen it in Europe. And so finance and fintech is an extremely regulated sector. And this creates a lot of problems when it comes to like not being able to scale, absorb the cost, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say it's a matter of time. Sorry, I've taken 5 minutes to answer this. Let me just say, I think it's a matter of time. More financial regulation and deregulation is happening. There are a number of companies that I think have tried. I think Daba was trying to do this. I mean, I think Complete Farmer, like a lot of the companies that are specialized in specific sector, like for instance crowdfunding for farmers, might have pivoted towards being an investment platform rather than a crowdfunding platform. So there have been some pivots in the space. If you look at the history of this, and this is actually a specific, like something that we've looked at back in the day across emerging markets. If you were re-uploading everything into the new website, but there was a specific piece on crowdfunding for farmers across emerging markets, because it's something that we've seen from literally Indonesia to Latin America. Happy to try to get you more content about context about this and content about this, but I would genuinely say it's a matter of time. But there are pockets of financing platforms out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dario. There are two questions in the chat, so I'll just read that out. The first question is from Dario, and he'd like to know what the process someone needs to go through to apply or to secure angel and pre-seed investments. So what does the due diligence process involve?
Just in general,
Yes.
so it depends. Like the due diligence process is the person's getting someone to look at your effectively contracts, bank accounts, client, whether everything you're saying is in order. However, the due diligence of a pre-seed company that might not have a product, that might not have customers, is different from the due diligence of a company that has millions of dollars in revenues, hundreds of employees, different contract, different client, different suppliers. So my advice towards this, because not really applying for angel or pre-seed funding. Usually, it's unless you're going for an accelerator that has cohorts that you need to apply for. You don't apply for funding. You get in touch with investors, or investor get in touch with you. The advice is to always try to, from the start, have a clean paper trail of everything that happens. It's not easy. It's not easy. Even the best companies you'll find that have much less housekeeping sorted than you would think. But it's very important that from the start you have like clean documentation. This is probably the only thing I would say. Which regions and sectors in Africa are likely to attract consistent funding in the next coming years? It's a gamble. Markets are cyclical. What I would say is definitely there's a need. There's core sector that are continuously having needs, and I don't think it's a sector, because I don't necessarily think people should like think of what sector are going to get funding and jump on an opportunity. I don't think that's how people become founders. And here we have dozens of founders that can tell me what their experience has been. I think it's about which market niche you're trying to sort of breach and build solutions for. So it's not necessarily a sector. It could be several market niches. It's about the execution. It's about your ability to actually build a company. And also we can get into kind of the metaphysics of what a company means, because not all companies need to be billion-dollar companies. I know that everyone seems to be selling this dream of billion-dollar companies, but trust me, building $3 million revenue companies is a hell of a job. And start with that. And then you'll see if the company is there to scale, or like start by building something. And then if that, because companies will change over time. Like since Brighter started, we went through COVID, wars, market tariffs, changes in very important government administrations across the world, market shifts up and downs, VC tumbling, VC boost going up to the roof. So the market will change, and it's about your ability to meet this demand, and not like by default deciding that you want to build a $1 billion company. I know founders that have come to me and be like, I am building $1 billion company. I want to build a billionaire. You don't even know what it means to build $1 billion company. Like, I think none of us in this call knows what it means to build $1 billion company. And if there is someone that does, please let us know what it is. Because already building a company that makes $10 million revenue at $60 million valuation, it's an absolute hell of a job that creates hundreds of jobs for the community, pays a lot of taxes, creates a lot of social impact in the market. And it's very important that we remember this. Not every company is a company that needs to become an Amazon. Let's take gradual step towards it.
Thank you very much, Dario. And there's one more question in the chat. This will be our last question. If you can be really brief with it, would appreciate it. So what role is government playing in the ecosystem? How does support from public sector compare to private sector inflows? Are there any specific call-out examples or initiatives, funding, tax incentives, or infrastructure, etc.?
Yeah, 100%. The government is an important actor. There are several government initiatives. Not everyone is. So, for instance, Brighter tried to apply for like exemption of tax credit for technology. The UK is actually very strict because unless you're a like life science scientific company, even if you build technology for the government, like we are doing, that doesn't count as a technological breakthrough. So they will not necessarily give you tax breaks and stuff. And this is actually firsthand perspective, firsthand experience. There's several from it depends on your sector, right? It depends on whether you're a highly regulated sector, whether you need R&D, whether you need patents, when you need licenses. So it's very important. Maybe the answers to this is make sure that you know what you're building and whether what you're building needs government approvals, because it's what's going to catch you as technical debt and regulatory debt if you don't get that straight upfront, including like if you're a company that is building something for hospitals, something for rails that then lay on banking systems, all of these highly regulated, you need to know it from scratch. You can't just wake up one day and be like, oops, I forgot that I needed to loop in the central bank. Especially because I've known companies that have failed because they've waited for 2 years of central bank approval. And they've gone nowhere with that. And they've raised to be able to then pay their staff until they get approval. So they were basically on life support. So it's very important to understand what you're building and understand whether there's a regulatory framework around it. Extremely important in every single sector.
Thank you very much, Dario. We really appreciate your time. To our audience, can you please drop in the chat some appreciation, positive remarks, feedback, whether it's an emoji with a round of applause or confetti. Just drop us in the chat and let's say thank you to Dario for his time. You can also use words. While that is going on in the chat, we would like to quickly move on to our next session. And our next session is on AI and automation, supercharging startup growth. We have one of our alumni with us who is leading it, Adelaide Atakra. She's an AI strategist, product innovation leader, and growth advisor with deep expertise in AI adoption, automation, and product development. She helps startups and enterprises unlock AI's full potential to drive growth, efficiency, and innovation. As the founder of Smart Business AI, Adelaide specializes in AI-driven strategy, data-driven decision-making, and digital transformation, empowering businesses to bridge the gap between AI aspiration and implementation. Through her expert guidance, tailored AI solutions, and ongoing support, businesses, teams, and individuals can stay ahead in today's AI-powered world. just as I was reading her bio, I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of AI in the bio. If anyone wants to take a wild guess on how many times I said AI, I'd like to see that in the chat. But that just goes to say that she is the best person to lead us in this session because of all the great work that she is doing in this space. So let's welcome Adelaide again with some positive emojis, with some words in the chat box as she prepares to share her screen with us and lead us through this session on AI and automation, supercharging startup growth. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Abna, for that warm introduction. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Trust we all having a great day. It's been a great session so far. So I'll just get us through on the session. So let me just go ahead and share my screen so that we can start. All right, awesome. I believe you can see my screen now, and hope the level of the sound is fine as well. Can just give me a thumbs up if you're hearing me okay.
We can.
All right, awesome, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, we just dive right in. All right, so yeah, today's session is on AI and automation, and the essence of that is to supercharge our startup growth. So yeah, we've heard a lot about AI. Let's just look at what we can do as startups, look into scale ventures with the leanest resources available. So yeah, let's prepare a few questions to help us to warm up into the session. So the first one is, what do Tinder, Netflix, and a broke person startup have in common? And it's just to poke at the fun. They all use AI and they make people say yes faster. So that's just to bring out the essence of AI. And the key statistic here is, sure, AI is very useful for sales and marketing, and has been proven to increase revenue at a very fast rate. However, we know as startups, we're still running on spreadsheets and the vibes. So that was just for fun. And then the second question is, what if your startup could clone your best salesperson, your smartest marketer, and your most reliable intern, and then make them work 24/7 for free? Yeah. And yeah, the answer is, of course, yeah, I with AI, that's all very much automatically possible now with the advancement of AI. So the statistic here is that you can go 40% faster as a startup to reach, your time to revenue, to break even as soon as possible. And so really there's no limit. I mean, we just have to, go all in and, make use of AI to the best of our abilities. So that's what we'll cover today. You can see the image from the left. It's quite an exciting one for me when I see that we have these 4 boards in the office setting. And that's a picture to paint an idea of where AI is headed in its application in business. And so today we're going to look at the fundamentals of how to apply this in sales and marketing and why it's critical for startups in particular. And then also we'll look at key AI automations, the tools that are available and accessible and how we can use them, and then practical implementations, case studies of companies that are already winning with AI, and then some actionable steps to follow. So let's just dive in. So AI, one way you can coin AI is to say it's an advantage for startups. So why the startup advantage? Because now small teams can operate just like a whole huge enterprise company with several resources available to them. So despite the limited resources that we have as startups, we can really go ahead and apply AI to, close that gap. So recently, just about a week ago, this memo came out from the Shopify CEO, and he announced to his team internally that the new rule is to hire AI first. So if there's any open role that AI can do, he doesn't see any reason why a human should be given the job. So AI should be given the job first. And that's quite an interesting take. But that's where we are headed. Most companies are realizing that now. So it's about leveraging AI as much as we can. So the core strengths of AI is that, of course, it helps us to automate repetitive tasks. That's the one key strength. And then it also helps in optimizing decisions and then improving customer engagement, especially when it comes to the marketing and sales use cases. So definitely, I know we are all aware of these key benefits. Scalability, AI can help us to, do a lot of work faster. And then the cost efficiency, because we're not relying on all the heavy manual processes, too many steps. AI can cut down the steps and then save us the cost. Yeah, we have better customer experiences because AI introduces personalization, retention, and engagement when we are interacting with customers, and of course, higher conversion rates because AI is working 24/7. You can capture any moment. You can capture the customer or potential client at any moment because AI is there to do that. And then continuous learning and improvement can help us to, get our startups to the next level. Yeah, so I wanted to share these interesting use cases. I know we might have already tried some of these chat apps that the main AI providers have available to us. ChatGPT is a very new app. Everyone is almost using ChatGPT on a daily basis these days. And these are other alternatives. In case you haven't tried any of them, you can go ahead and have a try. And then looking at these illustrations we have here, the first one is an example of doing product mockups with AI. So ChatGPT recently made an update to its image generation model, and now it can really generate like very high quality images. So you can mock up any image. And yeah, what we see here is like a physical product. It works very well for physical product, but even as tech startups, we don't have tangible products, but we can as well use AI to, capture the concept, bring out the concept so that customers can relate to our offerings in the image format. So, I mean, you can just use your creativity to create any model of what you think your startup's value proposition is in terms of having it as a picture to communicate that. And the second one is a use case that's for generating user-generated content. So that's content that feels like a friend is kind of recommending that product to you. So you can use AI to just create a model. Like you don't need actual human beings now to, model your products or to show up in ads or videos. You can just use AI to create an avatar or a model, real life model. And like we have this example here, this was designed by Joanna, and it really looks real, though it's AI. And then there's also another interesting use case, which is audio content generation. So you can create podcasts by just giving AI like a prompt, and then it can work on the prompt and then generate a whole full-length podcast. So I generated one, and once the resource is shared, you can have a listen after. You can, click on the link and then see how well the AI performed. I just shared here extra use cases we should be thinking about for our sales and marketing efforts. So AI can help in all of these areas, from content to documents to sales, emails, the whole length and breadth of the marketing spectrum. So yeah, we know that, but here's what I think will be the main essence of today's session, to really understand this concept about how to leverage AI. As techies, we understand how automation works. However, the next level is to employ automation, and other extra level is to make sure that we're using AI to create agentic systems that are autonomous, like the agents, the bots we shared earlier, who are now becoming part of core team in any company. So yeah, this is to share some tools specifically for different aspects of the marketing and sales funnel. So the funnel starts at the top and then it progresses downwards. So at every stage, there's an AI tool we can employ to, get the best out of the outcomes we have for that stage. So that's just a point of reference for the tools available. However, another step to this is to think in terms of leveraging AI, the best that it has to offer, and automations. So this illustration is supposed to get us to understand the concept of actually building more connected sequences of automation that are powered by AI. So here in the diagram, you can see that AI is at the core, providing all the intelligence, content and inputs, and then automation follows. They build on automation sequences that will wrap around the AI outputs, and then to create a chain of input output sequences. So you put in an input, you get an output, and you feed that output to the next automation node as an input. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, I know we get it. And then out of that, we can have feedback loops that will allow us to, receive feedback from the top of the chain all the way down, cascading down, and then from down going up. So that way we build a really robust system that understands each step, and then the whole system works together to get us, maximum results. So I think that's where we should be thinking as tech startups. We should be looking at building these sequences so that we can really leverage AI. So that's more like progressing from the everyday chats interface that we just put in a question and then ChatGPT pops up an answer. We can actually automate the whole process by building an automation workflow like this. So yeah, and then one key aspect is not to forget to add the human in the loop step, because AI is generating the content, and you never know, AI might be hallucinating or sharing some false information. So you still need to do some checks at each stage. So that's quite important to have at the back of our minds. So yeah, I'd like to share some success stories that will help us understand how, some tech companies are already leveraging AI to boost, their bottom lines. So here's Spotify, over 500 million active users globally. Yeah, so what they're leveraging AI for in this particular instance is to improve their ad delivery service. So they want to make the audio ads more native, and then in that way they get more conversions, and then their advertisers are happy. So that's what they did. They employed AI's capabilities to segment audiences and to create context-aware placement. What that means is if you're listening to music, and depending on the mood and the setting, Spotify has a way of figuring that out and then tailoring the ad to ensure that it fits that mood, and it means you're more likely to engage and take action on the ad. And yeah, it also has the predictive element where it can capture feedback loops and kind of gauge whether the ad is really relevant. And then it also has a dynamic creative optimization. That means as ads keep going out, AI continues to learn and improves the ads, in real time. And yeah, at the end of the day, they get the analytics on what's happening so that they can make tweaks and optimizations. So here's how it's benefited them: 30% increase in engagement, of course, 25% advertiser ROI, more click-throughs, and then less listener fatigue about ads. People just love to hear the ads. All right, so this is not Dash, a much slightly smaller company, but leveraging AI. And yeah, one key important aspect, I don't know if you got this, that the Spotify implementation is a build implementation. It means it technically engineered it from scratch. So as tech startup, we can think in this form. If we actually want to build in our own AI features that will, be extensions of our product to help us do our sales and marketing, as well as every other aspect of the startup operations. However, in DoorDash's case, it's rather a buy and configure. So instead of building everything from scratch, they're leveraging existing tools and customizing it to suit their their processes. So here's DoorDash. They have open in 27 countries globally. Here's what was happening. They had to build their emails from scratch with HTML forms, and that's very cumbersome. You know, instead of running your business, you're actually building email forms. So they wanted to make it more reusable and to make it faster and help with the targeting. This is how they implemented HubSpot's solution. HubSpot marketing helped them to just create landing pages on the fly, build email sequences on the fly, and then they also had the capacity to help them to cleanse the data as soon as they fetch it from their sales pipeline in Salesforce. And that helped to eventually, create email sequences that help them to segment their audiences. So now they are doing more hyper targeting, where this time they've separated audiences based on language, and then they're able to target them by this demographic profile. So yeah, this is the result. Sorry. So yeah, so this reduced the timelines to 3 days. I guess they were spending weeks earlier. Now the email workflows are automated. It just takes 2 minutes to get their audience segmentation going. They don't have to now do a lot of data cleaning to get it. And then it resulted in 20 extra deals at no extra cost. So this is real evidence of how organizations are leveraging AI, and there are thousands and thousands of other use cases out there of how people are using AI. So let's look at more like a no-code version. So for, let's say you're a smaller startup, you're less on resource, you don't have time to build, from scratch. There's simple automations that you can leverage. So I know we're all familiar with Zapier. And this is one use case I found could be relatable to us because, we leverage Paystack as our payment system. So one of the flows that you can build in Zapier is to run an automation where if a user abandons a payment, you'll get notification instantly in Slack so that you can follow up or check on that in real time. So yeah, that's how it runs. You just have to create a Zap and then configure it, connect to Paystack, connect to Slack, and then turn on the notifications, and then you start receiving the messages in real time. So very simple, straightforward. The second automation sequence is using ManyChat. I'm sure we've heard of it. Most of us have already heard of ManyChat. But yeah, it's a very simple one, but it really helps with your social media efforts. So you want to get people to respond to you in direct messages and then access a freebie so that you can get them as a lead. You can just get their email address to receive the freebie, and then now you have them as a lead. Just getting into ManyChat, setting up a trigger for Instagram, automating it to send a message once the person, DMs you, and then you can follow up, and then automatically the person is also stored as a lead at the same time. So this is something we can also leverage. A lot of organizations use this, and they get a lot of results. I mean, right now it's really hard to be on social media without actually automating this aspect of messaging. So yeah, third one. So this is more like an agentic system where we have 4 bots collaborating at each stage of the funnel. So we have a knowledge bot, we have a customer bot, content bot, and a prospecting bot. So this, you can easily build this no code in HubSpot. They have a new AI agent building platform called Breeze AI. So once you are there, you just identify your goals. What do you want the bot to focus on? As the bot going to help you to engage prospects or find leads or draft email or whatever. So you just determine that, and then right within HubSpot, you can set up the individual bots, and then you can try to get them to also be responsive. So once there's a trigger, they can follow up. And there can also be sequences where after some period of time, they'll get back in touch with the customer, they'll send a message, or conditional branching, like if something happens, that's how they should respond. So that helps them to build that autonomy where they can act without you prompting them all the time. Because it's like you've preset the reaction they should have for any trigger that they receive. So that makes them autonomous. And then finally, you just deploy and then keep monitoring and iterating on that to improve it, and then check your statistics, your metrics on the dashboard. So quite simple. It's a new one, but I think we can try it out. Yeah, they've got a lot of people already using it and giving them great feedback. So yeah. And so yeah, to wrap it up, yeah, the next steps we can take. Just simplified in this way. You just have to identify what is repetitive right now in your startup. Like, what is so manual that you have to keep doing. Maybe you have to keep sending a particular message to people. And I know as tech startups, most of our products already have built-in automated messaging. However, there are like marketing and sales where it's not inbuilt to the product. So you still need to find tools to automate this aspect. So just identify what is repetitive when it comes to that aspect, and then choose a tool that covers all the areas you're looking at, like some of the tools we've gone through today. And then the next step will be to start the automation process one at a time. Just pick on one, and then you can build on it as time goes on. So that's it. And then you continue optimizing. Optimization is very important. So just check the metrics that are coming in, measure, and then optimize. So those are 4 simple steps. Yeah, so basically that's it. What we've been through today, what we've looked at today is the mechanics of AI-powered marketing and sales automation. We've looked at the strategies for adopting these automation tools to simplify the process, and also practical implementation use cases that we saw for those already leveraging AI. And then the next step will be to create a roadmap so that you can get started immediately. So yeah, that's it. I'll say my takeaway that I want to pass on to everyone is to just go ahead and go double our sales pipelines and marketing workload. Just cut that in half, and you don't need a new team member to do that. You just need a new bot to join your team. So yeah, just one more thing to add. So today's session was focused on sales and marketing automation, but this applies across the board. Every aspect of business applies, and building the tech product itself, like building on AI features, design, data, product, finance, operations, decision-making, management, everything. So yeah, AI is here to stay, is the new normal. And yeah, my message to you, if there's one thing you remember from this session, will be, yeah, the AI world is now your oyster, and get out there and explore. So that's it. Thanks, everyone. I can take questions now, if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Adelaide. It was very practical. I would let our audience type their feedback, their key takeaways in the chat if they will. Yes, Alfred will make this slide available. So if you do want a copy of it, kindly send me an email, abena@meltwater.org, and I'll be happy to share the slide with you. We're also recording this session, so in case you want to watch it again, we would make the recording available to you as well, so you can catch up on it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat. You can either unmute or raise your hand and we'll call you out to do so, to ask your question. Let's give it a few minutes in case people are putting their thoughts together. In the meantime, Fumi, if you can please get ready for your session, you're up next. Adelaide, it looks like your session was very well facilitated because there are no questions for you at the moment. Oh, okay, I spoke too soon. There's one in the chat. Are there other business processes that benefit from these AI tools than marketing and sales?
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I just said the last tidbit was that this really applies across the board. Every other business product, like AI is kind of applicable. If you think about it, it's more like a human team member with I wouldn't say superior intelligence, but AI is quite capable because I mean computers are running behind the scenes and they're faster. They can make computations very quickly. So it really applies across the board. Anything you think of hiring someone to do, like the Shopify CEO shared, they should first think if AI can do it first, and then try and build a system that allows the core capabilities to come out. So yeah, the simple answer is obviously, yeah, it applies across the board to so many processes. Yeah, like I shared. I don't know if you have a follow-up or you want to have a very specific use case that you want us to dive in.
Maybe if there are examples of tools that you know in the different units or areas, you can share them as well. So maybe technology, design, data analytics, that might be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, one of the resources that I've added a link to. Once you get the PDF, there's a link in there. You can get a list of tools. I'll keep updating them. I'm sharing more tools there that cut across, the whole spectrum of business operations and business processes. So yeah, definitely, I'll do that.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, we'd like to thank Adelaide for her time and for leading us through this session on AI and automation, supercharging startup growth. Please drop your appreciation in the chat, whether it's by text, emojis, reactions, and let's thank Adelaide for her time. Up next, we have a session on compliance and governance, setting up for long-term success, and it will be led by Fumi Iayi. She's a partner at Templars. Templars is, Fumi is a partner at Templars based in the firm's Ghana office and is qualified to practice law both in Ghana and Nigeria. She holds an LLB from the University of Ibadan and an LLM in International Commercial Dispute Resolution from Queen Mary University of London. With experience at top Nigerian firms, a boutique Ghanaian law firm, and leadership roles at Lagos Court of Arbitration and the Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration Center, Fumi is a recognized expert in alternative dispute resolution across Africa. She advises clients on business law, foreign investment, corporate governance, immigration, labor, and compliance matters. She also leads Templars Legal Incubator Program, which offers pro bono legal support to entrepreneurs and startups. So with positive reactions, positive words, let's welcome Fumi to take us through the next session on compliance and governance. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Miss Wendy, you can help with my slides. Hi, everyone. I have been introduced, so I think the other bit is to say thank you to the organizers for having us here. Templars is very pleased to partner with MEST on as many ventures as possible. It's just introduced. We do have a legal incubator program, and that brings us right into, direct relationship with MEST. We support startups just like, you all, providing pro bono legal services to sort of, help you wade through the waters of your initial years of business startup. Yeah, all right. So today I have been asked to speak on compliance and governance, setting up for long-term success. And I know when, every other thing that has been spoken about, Marion came, Adlet came, everything is what you want to hear. But then when the lawyer comes on, it's almost like, there's just a bit of distraction. Let's actually get the business going first. Then we can talk to the lawyers later. But any smart person, when Ashwin was giving his welcome address, he spoke about all the stuff he's done with us, because anyone who intends to go far, right, beyond all, I'm just passionate about this and actually wants to, do impactful business, it's advisable to have lawyers from the onset. And then I'm hoping that after a few minutes of speak here, you will begin to think about what you haven't involved or what you have not included the lawyers in, and how you should start thinking of compliance and governance as an integral part of your business model from day one. Okay, Wendy, please. All right, so just the presentation outline. I've already spoken, well, Abena introduced Templars. I might just go past that. I've also spoken about our legal incubator program, which I'm going to speak on the next slide as well. But then thereafter, to the meat of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about the business models for setting up, right? After you have come up with a great idea, maybe out of university or out of the MEST program, whatever it is, how do you begin to engage as a business entity? We'll look at the different enterprise models. Then we'll look at the benefit and risks of these models. We'll look at the regulatory and compliance shape that's basically sector agnostic, what you must do as an enterprise, regulatory-wise. And then we'll also look at sector-specific regulatory requirements. And then we're going to look at new laws that hopefully will be coming in the coming years that will shape startup, the outlook on startups in Ghana specifically. I must add that everything I'm speaking about is really from a Ghana perspective, but it will apply to anyone who is joining us from a common law jurisdiction. Because the common law is, if English is what you speak in your country, you're colonized by the English, your law is most likely similar to what I was speaking about. So, while I'll be referring to Ghana, you find that it's almost the same in your country, like Kenya or Nigeria, and anywhere else that you may be joining from that is English speaking. Okay, thank you. Wendy, please. Okay, so we could skip about Templars now, because I think we've done that introduction. All right, so going into what startup business, the models for starting up a business. Essentially, you can start up a business when you can just put up the entire slide. Yeah, so you can start up the business. So you go back, please. You can start up a business as a sole proprietorship, right? You want to go one slide back. That's it, thank you. You can set up a business as a sole proprietorship. So sole proprietorship is essentially just you. You don't need, you can conduct a business as yourself. My name is Fumi Yai. I can conduct business just as myself without registering at the Office of the Registrar of Companies. I could conduct business and then pay my taxes. And that is legally allowed. One can do that. Of course, when you do that, it means that you and your business are the same. The protection that you will get when there's a separation between the company and you won't get that because you are your company. Okay, and then I'm not probably be very difficult for any investor or lender to be investing in a business that is the sole proprietorship. But just at a very basic level of business, one can trade as a sole proprietor, in Ghana. So, because on the side, you can see that one of the benefits of trading as a sole proprietor is you're able to make decisions quickly because it's really just you. You have no board. You don't need to pass any resolutions. But I think everyone can quickly see that that doesn't really help when you are looking to do something grand scale, right? But that option is available for anyone who perhaps it's the most appropriate way for one to start now. You also enjoy all the profit from the business because you're the only one that owns it. You have local partners. So that's as far as sole proprietorship goes. But like I said, if you need to if the business you are going into, and I suppose that would apply to most of us here, is a sector that is regulated by a regulatory body in Ghana, then you can't operate as a sole proprietor because the regulatory body will require you to be a registered business, right? So it works, but it's probably not going to work for anyone here, but it's an option that is available under the law. Next slide, please. Thank you. The other option for setting up is what is called a partnership. So people can say, oh, my business partner, well, that's my partner, but then under the law, there's an actual definition of legal partnership because you register when the law recognizes someone as a business partner, it means that you have gone to the registrar of companies to register that partnership as a legal partnership. And it could be between, of course, once there's a partner, that means it has to be more than one person. So the minimum number of people that can form a partnership under the law is a minimum of 2 people and a maximum of 20. So once you have more than 20 people coming together to do anything, you can't be a partnership anymore. You have to consider other platforms for operating. But if you're anything below 20, of course, more than one person, you can register as a partnership. It's a less comprehensive form of business structure, right? And when you consider it from a tax perspective, the business itself is not taxed. So your partnership is not taxed. What happens when you are working in a registered partnership is that all the individual partners are taxed kind of like the sole proprietor, just as a personal, as your personal income. Whatever it is you earn from the partnership is what is taxed, but not the partnership as an entity. So each of the partners would have to have tax numbers and all for the revenue authority. The registered partnership, you can register that at the ORC. Most of the processes for registration at ORC, you honestly don't really need a lawyer for this thing. It's really very straightforward. You can download the form from the ORC website, or you can walk there to pick up a form. But it's pretty straightforward. You don't even need, I know that sometimes you may see people hanging around those offices looking to help people choose this. The system is actually one that is, I wouldn't say automated, but very straightforward, and anyone can just do it on their own. Now, the benefits of partnership over a sole proprietorship is at least, for partnership, one is able to probably access capital or investment, which you're most likely not going to get as a sole proprietor. And then the thing about partnerships also is you get to share your losses the same way that each partner is personally liable for the loss of the business. The same way from that same vein, each partner is responsible for, or rather, let me put it this way. When you're in the partnership, each partner is personally responsible if the business goes down. So it's different from what we will speak about, in the next slide, which is a registered company, which I think you're all familiar with. Under a partnership, if there are 5 partners and the business goes bust, the liability of the partnership will be spread across the 5 partners, right? There is no separation. The partnership is not separate from them as individuals. All right. Can we go to the next slide? All right, and then this is the most popular and then the most complex as well form of business establishment. It's a company limited by shares. So if you have a company limited by shares, under the law, this entity is actually considered separate from the people who have set it up. So remember what we said about partnerships? You can have maybe 20 people come together as partners in the registered partnership. But in that scenario, the law actually looks at each of the partners as being responsible for the success or failure of the business. But when it comes to the company limited by shares, it's different. For the most part, or at least in a lot of scenarios, the company has a different personality from the person. In fact, under the law, even though that is shifting a bit, the company is a legal person separate from the individuals who own it, who are also legal personalities. So that's how the company is within that. So it's an incorporated entity in which the owners, right, the persons who own the business, they subscribe to shares in the company. And they don't have to be, as you must be aware, it doesn't have to be equal shares. So you can have, I'll just say 20. People come together to start a company, and one can have 60% of the shares, and remaining 19 share the rest. But so the share distribution does not have to equal. You can have up to 50 persons set up a company limited by shares, but no more than that. In terms of governance structure, the company limited by shares is managed by the directors. So the owners of the company are the shareholders, and then the law requires that the shareholders also appoint directors. In many cases, especially when it's startups, shareholders are the directors, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But the business of the company is it's run by the directors, and the law separates this. The assembly of share owners, which is called the shareholders, and then board of directors. All right, and same as with the registered partnership, you can walk up to the ORC to register this business. You can download the forms from the ORC website. ORC is the Office of the Registrar of Companies. Download the forms, fill in the information, and then go to the ORC to register. To set up the company limited by shares, in addition to identifying who the shareholders are, agreeing on what your share distribution is, you also need to show that you have a company secretary. The company secretary, most times a lawyer, but doesn't have to be a lawyer. Any one of the directors can also be a secretary. You can also be the company secretary. So you can have a company secretary, or you must have a company secretary. You're also required to have auditors, and then these days at the ORC, they want to know, so you could be setting up a company and have an investor out of Spain or something, because that is a corporate investor. But when you go to register that company, the registrar of companies would ask you to provide details for the investor. Basically, what the registrar of companies always wants to know for every company being set up is who are the individuals behind this company. It's called beneficial ownership declaration. You must show who are the people that own the shares in this company. It's not enough for you to say the company is owned by another company. You need to declare who owns the other company, who owns the investor company as well. So that's also very important. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we've talked about the different ways you can set up. So proprietorship or partnership, the company limited by shares. Once you have got that out of the way, you set up your company, right? Your next step is your regulatory compliance, all right? So there are some compliance things that you have to do regardless of the sector that you're operating in. And then there's some that are specific for your sector. So we'll start first with the ones that are sector agnostic that you will have to do regardless of the sector that you're in. So the first we'll look at is the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. So the GIPC applies where you have foreign participation in your business. In the course of my working with startups, a lot of people, there's a lot of cross border collaboration with startups. And I think it's also similar with most of the MEST alumni, because we meet people from all across the continent, and then you're able to agree on things and you think, oh, why don't we start this thing together? But then when somebody from country A is starting something in country B and you want to do it in country A or even country C, you know, it's now like it's an international business because you have ownership across borders. And as far as Ghana is concerned, such entities must register with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. The fact that there's foreign participation, whether it is wholly or part, brings you right in there. And the GIPC has its own compliance regime. There's actually, I think there's a minimum capital requirement of $200,000 for any business that has foreign participation to start business in Ghana, right? That's as that law sits today. Now, so if your business has foreign participation, you should be looking at the GIPC. Once you get that out of the way, the other bit that you must do, what you're now required to do, is get your license under the Data Protection Act. So simply because, and it doesn't matter, you don't have to be doing any big data processing type. If you're an employer, if your business has employees and you're paying, salaries, and therefore you have employee details, that's how the law looks at it. You are required to register under the Data Protection. You are required to get licensed by the Data Protection Commission. So these days, it pretty much affects any business. So for us as a law firm, when we're advising our clients on setting up in Ghana, we just say register with Data Protection Commission, because almost any way you look at it, you will consider it a data processor, maybe because you're paying salaries or because you have their phone numbers, whatever it is. So that's one thing, that something else that business and even a startup is required to do. Next slide, please. All right. So here I have just put down a list of all the regulatory bodies that affects your business depending on what it is you do. So possible in IT innovation are doing a lot of stuff around fintech, right? If your business or your startup has to do with any payment system, anything touching on financial services, you have to, it comes within the regulatory ambit of the Bank of Ghana, and you have to get licensed by the Bank of Ghana. If it's securities markets, you have an AI stuff that's able to analyze markets, economies, and anything along that, you have to get licensed by Securities Exchange Commission. We already talked about registering your business with ORAS, but outside of registering, which is starting a business, there's also the compliance bit, which has to do with your annual returns that you must file every year, showing sort of like a snapshot of what the business has done every year. You're required to do that, and this one would apply regardless of the sector, right? If you have some intellectual property right that you want to protect, then the Registrar General's Department regulates that. If your startup touches on cybersecurity activities, there's a cybersecurity authority that will regulate you. If it's in telephone and telecoms, anything to do with communications, you have to get licensed by the National Communications Authority. I've just spoken about the GIPC and the Data Protection Commission. I mean, if it's education, for instance, if you've got an app on EduTech, then the Ministry of Education actually licenses you. So the thing is, you have to start making that inquiry. Once you've passed the first step of general regulatory, which is there's also the tax authority. You have to register with the Ghana Revenue Authority, whatever business it is you're doing. You do your data protection, and you have to inquire whether through your lawyer. At this stage, it's best to have a lawyer because you could be asking people to go on the desktop, but you probably won't get all the information. So it's best to sort of have somebody, a lawyer who's advising you at this stage, to find out what else you need to do in terms of regulatory compliance. And I'm sure for anyone who's looking for investment, for instance, the investor would want to see that you have met all regulatory or compliance requirements. Next slide. Okay, so this is on tax authorities. You have to, like I said, you have to register with the Ghana Revenue Authority. I'd already mentioned that partnerships don't pay tax as the partnership itself, as a registered partnership, but the individuals in the partnership will pay their income tax, and what the Revenue Authority will look at is the income they get from that partnership. But if you're a company limited by shares, then you pay corporate income tax. Yeah. And then, of course, if you're a resident in Ghana, you pay, so the shareholders, for instance, you also pay, who receive dividends. And when the dividend is being paid to you, must withhold tax on the amount of the dividends. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So when we go past regulatory compliance, we look at intellectual property considerations. You set up your company, you have registered or you're licensed with all the required regulators. Now, intellectual property consideration is more for your protection. If you don't do it, no one is really going to be asking you, except maybe an investor who wants to know that your business is well protected. But when you get into this area, it's more for your protection. It's not so much of a compliance issue, but it is what you want to do to make sure that your business can stand the test of time, as what we're discussing today. So there are various intellectual property rights that can be acquired. You can acquire a trademark, you can acquire a patent, you can acquire copyright. So trademark, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it has to do with, the mark. So you can come together and you have a business idea, and someone just has this brainwave of a name or a logo that connects with business, and you know that, oh, when you join the name you've thought of and then this logo, it will just, it helps boost your business even more, or makes you sell it better or anything like that. And the last thing you want is for another person to be using that same name to sell maybe cups or something crazy like that. So that's what takes you to trademarks office to register that mark, right? So when you register that mark, then you're sure that whenever you use the name, no one is thinking you're anybody else, and nobody else is passing off as you, or at the very least, distracting your market reach. Also, the similarity of names. You can register a name, you can register a mark, which is kind of like a logo. And then what you do when you go to register is you say at the trademark registry, you then explain to them that this mark and this logo, I want it to be registered in all these categories. And you sort of cover all the categories of the business that you are doing, so that you go as far, because there are specific categories, when it comes to trademark registration. Is it could be garments, for instance, right? But you want to make sure that the mark, when you register it, covers any possible business sector that you could think of entering, that your business can expand into entering, just so that you're covered. That's how trademark works. Next slide. For patents, which is probably more at home with most of us here, because it has to do with innovation. The patents are also registered at the Registrar General's Department, same as trademarks. When to register a patent, you file an application at the Registrar General's Department containing a request for a description or a claim regarding a drawing or an abstract, including or name, the prescribed data, the inventor's information, and then the title of the invention. So it's all in the form. And patent registration is it's very thorough because one, the registrar has to see that not only have you come up with something innovative, you need to demonstrate to them that you're able to do it again. So they're required to demonstrate to them in their presence that you're able to, redo this thing that we claim you innovated. Okay. Now, the other thing you need to note is that patent registration is a global registration. So sometimes it takes quite a bit of time to get the registration to because of the fact that once you have it registered, you're registered globally because Ghana is a member of a convention that speaks to this. Let me go on to the next slide, please. Can we go on to the next slide, please? All right, so copyright, this has more to do with, and I'm not sure if we have any of these people here, but if you're an author or you come up with a song, you've written a book, sort of like artistic musical type work, those are the things that are protected by copyrights. And then the copyrights is, you get that copyright protection at the Copyright Commission, right? And for you to be able to get a protection here in Ghana, you actually have to, you actually have to be Ghanaian to get that protection. Sorry. If you go on to the next slide, we'll just sort of put together. Can we please go to the next slide? So you can see here different types of intellectual property registrations and protections one can get, the duration. So if you have a trademark, if you've successfully registered your trademark, you are protected for 10 years from the date of the registration, not 10 years from when you start, right? Because as you can see in the next column, the processing time is 2 years. So it's 10 years from when they actually publish your mark in the journal at the Registrar General's Department. You're protected for 10 years. After that, you have to go and renew it if you're interested. I already said that the regulator agency is the Registrar General's Department. The fee for this process is about $615. And then the other column talks about what the penalty is for infringement. So somebody, if you are not careful, for those of us here, and you're using somebody else's trademark because you think, oh, there are actually penalties for infringement, and that's what is written there. And then for patent, once you have your patent registered, you'll have a patent protection for 20 years. It does take about 2 years to get the whole processing done from when you start engaging them to when your patent protection is actually, your patent registration is completed. Take about 2 years. But then once you have it, your protection is for 20 years. And you see that the fee is just $100. So this at least sort of gives you a summary of how to go about trademark, or sorry, intellectual property registration. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to be rounding up this one. This is more looking at what's coming up, right, for startups in innovation. So there's the introduction of the Innovation and Startup Bill, which is really a law to support startups. It's not a law yet, it's a bill. So a bill is something that's before the parliament that has not been passed as law. And the way to pass a bill into law is a lot of, apart from the fact that the parliament has to pass it by way of majority vote. The point I'm making is, if as a startup community, if you think that this is something that is helpful to you, then you can actually make presentations at the parliament regarding this bill to speed it up, because it's actually been in parliament since last year and should have been passed into law by now. But maybe there was no pressure for them to do it. So the bill is called the Ghana Innovation and Startups Act bill, right? If it becomes law, then it will be called the Ghana Innovation and Startups Act, all right? Now, the key provisions of the bill is the setting up of an agency, the establishment of the Ghana Innovation and Startups Agency, which will sort of apply to, I suppose, most of us here, right? And then the law, or I'll say the bill, actually defines what a startup is. So for you to get under the regulatory ambit of this agency, you have to fall under the strict definition of a startup. And the next point there just shows how a startup has been defined as a business that is headquartered in Ghana, right? You have at most 50 persons in terms of your staff strength. There's a high potential for growth, and then your total balance sheet is not more than 10,000 Ghana cedis. That's an excellent definition, I think. Yeah, next slide, please. All right, so the key provisions of the bill is that startups, the people who meet the requirement, the startup as the bill defines them, will have specific tax incentives, all right, for their businesses. And I mean, that's absolutely great. Who doesn't want to get tax free? So there will tax incentives. Also, investors in the startups will also get some form of tax breaks and things along those lines. They will also have access to the Ghana Innovation and Startup Fund, which the government will fund. So this will help innovation, growth, and scaling up of your business. They will be positioned, the startups will also be positioned to be able to attract investments. And like I said, investors will also have tax breaks. Yeah, so that's a summary of what the bill provides. And I think it will be a fantastic law if it comes into place, and it just requires people who think who thinks it will positively impact them to push for it to become law. All right, because a lot of times we don't seem to realize that the people who sit down in parliament actually are your representatives and they work for you. But when there's no interest, nothing gets done. And so we can sit and maybe say nothing is happening, but really sometimes it's because we're not making things happen. So if, this is one of the things that you can make become a law that may benefit some of us here on the platform. Okay, so that pretty much brings me to the end of my presentation. Yeah, so I just put something here. No idea is too small to nurture, and with the right tools, relevant knowledge, and guidance from experienced players in the sector, you can develop your idea, set up a business in the tech industry, and attract investors and business opportunities for your long-term success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fumi. This is one of the important things that we need in running a business. Legal and compliance is things that founders don't pay a lot of attention to, but is very integral to their long-term growth. So we're very grateful to you for sharing this with us. Very, very insightful. Please, are there any questions? You can either drop them in the chat or you can raise up your hand. You can also unmute to ask your questions. And while we wait for the questions to come in, please also type in the chat how you found the session, what your key takeaways are. If you have any positive emotions and emojis for Fumi, you can also drop that in the chat. Thank you.
Hi, please. I want to ask a quick question. Can you hear me, please?
I can.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Thank you for the presentation. I didn't know so much. But anyway, three quick ones. The patents are global, but what about the trademarks and the copyrights? 1. 2, the directors. Do you have this thing called silent directors? But in Ghana, if one company gets into trouble, there's a penalty of not being able to create a company again for maybe 5 years or something. So if you may be a silent director in a company, you are not paying attention to its operations and they get into trouble where you had nothing to do with it. How can you protect yourself? And then I just wanted to clarify the startup bill, 10,000 Ghana cedis, because that is basically about 600. That means practically nobody is a startup when you get your first customer. So just these three these 3 clarifications. Thank you very much. I don't know if you got them.
I got them. So the second one was on silent directors. The first one, tell me what the first one was again, please.
The first one was talking about whether copyrights and trademarks too are
Yeah.
global.
Yeah. All right. So trademark is not global from your single registration. So this is how trademark works. If you register a trademark here, right, you are covered in this jurisdiction, Ghana. Okay. If you want to now take your product to South Africa, Kenya, you have to register it there. Or sometimes what people do is when you're registering here, you can actually say here that you want your registration to be sent to the WIP, so that's the World Intellectual Property Organization, to be registered in several other jurisdictions. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can do a local registration here, but you can from here do a registration in the WIPO that would apply in multiple jurisdictions. Yeah. Copyright, on the other hand, is local, right? But then it's local in the sense that you can only be Ghanaian to get a copyright protection in Ghana. Right? So yes, but then your copyright protection would apply in other jurisdictions. You know what, I'll just give your information to Abena, right? And then you can come back to me on this. I'll come back to you on intellectual property. Just give your information. Thank you. Now, on the silent director, you're absolutely right, and that's why you should be a silent director. There's nothing like a silent director. If you're a director, you have as much liabilities as the person who's most active. So if someone comes to you with a form and just says, oh, just be a director for me, there's nothing like that, because you are equally liable as the man who is the promoter of the business. And like you said, if the company gets into trouble, it would affect whatever else you want to do in the future. So there's nothing like a silent director. The law places the same liability on one director as on the next.
So if
And
you are
then
in something like that already, can you write something, a sort of disclaimer or something to protect yourself? Or you just have to resign from the position?
Oh, that I'm a director, but I'm not active in the business. There's nothing like that. It's like saying I'm a man, but I'm not a male. There's nothing like that. And then your third point on startup. So are you saying 10,000 Ghana cedis is high?
Yeah, no, it's low. 10,000
exactly. So
is
it's
very
good.
low.
So that makes it good, isn't it?
So then if you're a startup, you make, let's say, a few sales and now your balance sheet is more than 10,000 Ghana cedis. It's like 10,000 Ghana cedis is a very low amount.
I understand what you're saying. The point you're making is that then it takes you out of the band.
Yes. And your first 5 customers.
Yeah, I understand that. But you know what? I mean, it's just a bill. It's something that can still be amended, and it will only be amended if people, like I said, respond to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But I can get back to you on copyright if you put your information down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Alfred. I will share your details with Fumi because I have it already. If there are any questions, please drop them in the chat. You can unmute or raise your hand. Thank you. While we wait for questions to be dropped in the chat, Nick, if you can please get ready. You are our next and final session for today. There's a question in the chat for me. We have lots of insights from Ghana and Nigeria. Anything for Francophone countries?
So yeah, that's what I was explaining when I said that I'm speaking specifically from a Ghana perspective, and it would apply to most common law jurisdictions. Francophone countries are not common law jurisdictions, they are civil law jurisdictions. So the law is slightly different. If you have specific questions, I could provide those answers, but my presentation was largely relating to common law jurisdictions.
Thank you for that, Fumi. So, Stephen, if you have any specific question that you want to ask about legal and compliance in Francophone countries, please type the specific question in the chat, and let's see whether Fumi can help us with it today. If not, you can also just send me an email or a WhatsApp message after this session. I can forward it to her and we can take your concerns offline.
Yeah, I see some other question that says, do the conditions for startups, or do the conditions for the startup will apply if you meet all the terms or just a single term? E.g., under the, I don't know if that was the same guy, but it's all. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please, are there any other questions? If you are still putting your thoughts together, you can also email me or WhatsApp me. I'll drop my email in the chat. I'll be happy to pass that on to Fumi, and then we can address your concerns offline.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Fumi. Please, let's
Thank
drop
you.
our positive reactions, our takeaways in the chat as always. Any emoji that shows how you're feeling. I see a heart from Alfred. I see confetti from Alfred. It's good to know that you found, quote unquote, what founders think is the boring stuff very insightful and very engaging. We thank you all for your participation. Our next and
Hi,
final...
everyone. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Our next and our final session is going to be led by Nicholas Clerk, and it's going to be on fundraising in Africa 2025, mastering financials and investor relations. Nicholas Carl Clerk is a finance professional dedicated to empowering African entrepreneurs and strengthening startup ecosystems. As Ghana's representative for Renew Capital, an Africa-based early-stage accelerator and VC firm, he leads early-stage investments, portfolio management, and pipeline development across Ghana and other key West African markets. With an extensive background supporting SMEs, startups, and innovative enterprises across multiple sectors and functions, Nicholas brings a broad strategic perspective to ecosystem development in emerging markets. He actively collaborates with founders, ESOs, and ecosystem enablers to drive transformation through technology, strategic partnerships, and data-driven insights. He is passionate about unlocking capital for African startups and equipping founders with the resources they need to scale successfully. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome our final speaker for the Unconference 2025, Nicholas Clerk.
Thanks a lot, Abna, for the introduction. I should have added a couple of hobbies as well as you were at it. Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen.
It's loading, so please give us a few minutes.
Okay, cool.
You can talk through your hobbies. It's never too late. What do you like to do in your spare time?
At the moment, I'm still trying to balance, family and love life. So we'll see how that works out for me personally. But sport is my thing. I was checking out the Champions League yesterday for those who are interested. I was a hater, but eventually, anyway, hopefully the screen has come before I dive. And
it's still loading on my end, but if anyone can see it, please just give us a thumbs up or drop in the chat. Okay, it's up now. Over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And big ups to Fumi as well. No, it's hard. I was listening in and I was like, wow, this is so complicated for one person to digest and one person to disseminate as well. So thank you, Fumi, for that. So I'll just dive right in. My session is pretty much on fundraising, everything fundraising. The plan is to make this as engaging as possible. So my first question for everyone is drop an emoji on how your week is going so far. Personally, for me, I've been crawling towards this holiday. So if there was any emoji that could show how tired I look, then that'll be my emoji. So in the meantime, I have another follow-up question, which for me is a huge icebreaker when I talk to different founders, is if you had to describe your fundraising journey as a movie title, what would it be? I've heard Fast and the Furious, I've heard Moana, I've heard Final Destination, twisted stories for everyone. And that gives you a sense for how fundraising is on the continent in general. It's very nuanced, it's very different. Everybody's reality is a lot different. And it's important for everyone to understand that we'll dive into that. Fundraising may not be for everyone. It may also be for a few, but we'll dive into that. In terms of purpose and objectives, I just want us to come out of this feeling a bit more enthusiastic and a bit richer in terms of not just knowledge, but just practical skills, realistic skills and competencies, which we essentially use in fundraising or in other aspects of life. All this is just a lot of words, but in summary, that's all I want is for everybody to come out of here being good for this session, being good for it, not just for Renew Capital, but across the spectrum of other funders and investors, sorry. So yeah, but the agenda, we'll just touch on a few things. We'll look at our funding reality of the continent. We'll understand how the fundraising landscape looks like, and we'll dive into the practical stuff. And hopefully we get a lot of time for a lot of Q&A, because I'm sure there are lots of questions. Saving the best for last, of course. So, but we have a lot of questions in terms of fundraising, in terms of what to do. Anyway, we'll just dive into that. But before that, I'll just do a bit about Renew Capital. We're an Africa-focused fund. Like Ashley mentioned earlier, we've been based and camped in East Africa for quite a bit. We've moved to West Africa. We did this in 2023. We started with Ghana. So Ghana was pretty much the anchor in West Africa. And we are slowly expanding. We're looking to do a bit more in Francophone West Africa. We're looking to do a bit more up north as well. We have a person in Morocco, we have a person in Tunisia. So we're hoping to do a lot more in terms of early stage investment, and particularly from the point of being on the ground to actually source these deals, to assess the deals, run through different processes of due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. I'm the only person in Ghana running everything so far. Hopefully we get one more person to take the load off, but until then, hopefully it'll be a one-man working crew. And we have a portfolio of about 49 companies. Ticket size is pretty low, between 50 to 300K USD. Follow-on goes a bit higher to about 2 million. And the plan is simple, just source the best founders and back them as far as they want to go and as far as we want them to go. So why fundraising, or why this conversation matters? Winter, they say, is coming, Game of Thrones reference. The whole point of the winter is not exactly weather-wise, because for those who are in Ghana and West Africa, it's super hot today. And the whole point of winter is the funding has dipped from 2021. We are not in 2021, 2022, where we peaked in terms of inflows into the continent. A lot has changed, and we are now in the new reality where businesses are having to adapt. Businesses are having to operationalize different processes. Private angels, for example, are more active in the space now because there's opportunity for them. Local capital from these private angels or from private local investment firms are now becoming more visible and more active. And one thing to note is DFIs as well are trying to tap into the investment space as well. Back then, it was more about cash to maybe a fund, and then the fund executes, but they are integrating vertically and they're trying to dive right into actual funder sourcing, which is a pretty tricky space, but from conversations I've had, it's like that's what they're trying to pivot around. And this comes off the back of so many changes. There's a USAID change, there's how funding and the donor-backed funding is changing. A lot of things are changing moving forward. Even founders are no more accepting checks. They don't want just money. Now it's more of, okay, you can give me the money, but what else can you offer me? Which becomes a very interesting conversation for VCs and for investors, because they are pretty much used to just cutting checks, swinging by a few times just to push you to do as much as you can, just to meet a certain valuation, all those things. But now it's more hands-on. Conversations have to be very common. Even recently, we had a tax issue with Delaware. One of our portfolio companies had an issue with Delaware. So these are all very hands-on things most founders are looking for now from investors. But before we dive into investment, as founders, as upcoming founders, it's important to ask yourself the right questions. Why exactly am I looking for investment? What is investment? It's external funding. Why do I need external funding? You don't have to raise external funding to be successful. That's one. What exactly motivates you? Are you thinking about raising capital? Are you ready for it? Or is it because everybody is raising VC money? You hear somebody had a valuation of 60 million and raised close to maybe 15 to 20. It sounds like a lot of money because 15x that in Ghana cedis, that's a lot of money. And it makes you wonder, so why exactly are people fundraising? And I want us as founders to think about that as well. Do we have traction? Is it the drive we need? Do we have ambition? Can we partner with somebody? It's no more my company, it's now our company. Can we focus the right mindset to these type of shifts? We'll see about that. And if we do, there's a lot more in terms of funding on the continent. There's grants, there's angel money, there's crowdfunding. I think somebody raised the topic on crowdfunding earlier, which is fantastic. There's family and friends, there's private capital, there's revenue-based financing, and there's debt. You could do loans, you could do debt, but then the whole point is the money on the continent is not just VC money. VC maybe is a bit loud. Most reports are around venture capital, but lots of people are making moves underneath the surface, closing deals for asset financing type models. But there's money around. You just have to find out at which stage you are in and how does that apply to you as a early stage founder, maybe as a growth stage founder. You just try and match these things as much as you can, and for that to be relevant to your stage of growth. Otherwise, you're just raising money with unnecessary pressure. You raise VC money, they expect a certain speed in terms of scalability. You were not ready for that. You were hoping for something a lot more patient. You were not ready to pay back a loan because you didn't have enough cash flow. So all these nuances have to be realistic to your business. And then from there, you start building, okay, so now I need capital. This is the type of capital I need. Let me stack it this way, and then hit milestones as you go along. So yeah, looking at the landscape, Partech in their recent report estimated that there were about over 500 investors on the continent. I think Brighter Bridges earlier said there were about over 700 deals done. So deals are being done, checks are being cut. There are lots of players looking for the right founders. It's just that the criteria has become a bit more, I wouldn't say strict, but it's almost like a tougher Champions League. Just for those who know what Champions League is, it's competition of different people who think they're good enough. It's just now tougher because investors want to back the right person. You have Launch Africa, you have Noshkin, you have all these other guys trying to look for the right person in each country or in as many countries as they can. And yeah, it's a lot of activity. There are about 150 plus doing 2 deals or more. There are about 8 to 10 of them doing like minimum 10 deals. So there's a lot of activity on the continent. There's a lot of opportunity as well for founders to tap into. And yeah, now trying to understand how the funding landscape looks like. I've broken it down to just a few. For those who know more funding sources or funding types, feel free to drop that in the chat and educate all of us as well. I just put together just these few, so it doesn't fog your memory a bit. So we break it down. We take each of them as they come. So you do grants, for example. What kind of scale? What do I need to unlock grant funding or donor funding, for example? I summarize it in one sentence. Don't just talk impact, learn to quantify it. If I were you, or if I was looking for grant funding, I would spend 5 to 10 hours reading past reports from previous grantees. It could be from any grants body. Just read, just understand what the lingo is. And I like to tell people and play the game, understand the lingo, learn how to quantify your impact. You at some point need to attach registration details of your business, of course, to validate it, auditor statements for them to know how your money moves and how you spend money. But then the whole point is impact. You have to draw a problem, a societal problem. You have to find that development problem and tilt your business to solve that. So if it's unemployment, that could be SDG 1 or 8, for example, which is no poverty. You could fit it into all these type of SDGs. And then if you're ready, you could ask for an introduction to a DFI, you could ask for an introduction to a founder who would know somebody who might have backed him in the past. These things or most of the things in this space are pretty much introductions. Cold visits, you could pull up to GIZ's office, and just tell them you want to meet whoever handles their green entrepreneurship, scope them out on LinkedIn. You have to be very nimble with these things and very sharp. Or you want to tap into angel investments. What do angel investors typically look for? They are very early along your growth. So they're just looking for somebody who looks like he's doing a lot of things. So I summarize it in be everywhere and show movement. Most times, West Africans, we like to use the word show working. You have to show that you're building something. You don't just sit in a room and do whatever and assume they can feed off that energy, that vibe. They're actually building the next Google, for example. And it's not simple. It's very time consuming, but you just have to be places, meet different people, talk to different people. You might meet a few angels multiple times, which only validates that, oh, this guy or this lady is pretty much locked in or zoned in, ready to do a lot of things. And she's going around, he's going around. They feed off this energy, and then they want to take a bet because their bets are very early. There's sometimes not even an MVP yet to back, but then they back on the founder, and you have to show that level of commitment to your business. Or you go into crowdfunding, and crowdfunding is essentially just taking money from multiple people into your business. For me, the sell is you have to try and sell to your close circle first. If you're able to sell to your close circle, you have a better chance of selling to strangers because through this small circle thing, you get a lot of validation, critiques as well. You get a lot of feedback on how to refine it, what to sell, what to show. And then, pretty much once you get through that, you've exhausted your network, then you can go out to crowdfund from external people who may not even meet you as a person, as a founder, but they're willing to back you with their own hard-earned money. Or you want to go into debt financing where you're just going to pay a principal with your interest or with their interest. It could be 12, it could be 10, it could be 20%. But then the plan is for you to not kill your runway. So how do you get access to this level of funds? They usually focus on cash flow. How much money are you making? How much money do you project you could make? How much money do you think you can use to pay us back? And we wouldn't want your business to die as you're paying us back. So it should be sustainable for you as well. But then again, realistically, debt capital is just looking for returns. So they don't care about what your big plan for 20 years is, how you want to be the next Google, Elon Musk, Amazon. They just want their money within the number of years they give you the money for. 5 years, we just want our money with interest. So you have to be thoughtful enough to think through all these things, look inward, assess that, to know your capabilities, to see if you qualify or you can handle the stress of being in debt to an institution or to an institutional investor. Or you could just do family and friends where you just have those awkward conversations with family members. We like to keep things to ourselves usually because, you fake it till you make it. But at some point, you have to reach out to family for them to maybe give you that additional level of runway in order for you to figure this product market fit out. And then eventually, when the spark hits, you are launching and you're on an upward trajectory. And for family and friends, I know emotions come into play, but it's important to keep it as professional as possible. Contracts are contracts. Receipts are receipts. Signatures are signatures. There's no, my uncle invested and my uncle, I'm not going to get access to my uncle's inheritance if I don't forget about the business. It's a whole thing. It's a whole kind of worms, but you always, to be in good standing, always have the paperwork, post and pre any agreement or any level of disbursement. You must always keep these things close to heart. Revenue-based finance, similar to debt, you have to be making money already for them to be able to look at you and assume that, okay, in this number of months, you'll be able to give us back our percentage. Every month, we take 20% of your revenues and we pay off this loan facility we have or this capital we've given you. And then over a number of years, 24 months, 36 months, you can eventually pay everything back with interest. And then there's the private capital, PE, private equity, and then venture capital, who essentially expect you to blitz, to scale as much as you can and as fast as you can. But the trick for most PEs and VCs is you need to build your business like they wouldn't even fund you. You need to focus heavily on the business, on the metrics, post all these numbers on traction, track everything. And then, Once you get in front of them, you could, as a tip, you could create FOMO. But I feel more confident because now you have a business that is a machine, and all it needs is fuel to grow from 0 to 100. And yeah, don't be scared to, say you are thinking about it. It's not every money you rush for, because you have to prove to them that you are going to build this business to a certain scale with or without them. And which should be the reality. You should always understand your business and the fundamentals. You're not building to raise money. You're building to sustain the whole business in perpetuity. Fuel, capital, these are all things that help you along the way to move you from point A to point B a lot faster. So now that we've looked at that, generally, after all that waffling, generally, what do funders look for? They look for a product. Product has to be innovative, has to solve a problem. Is it a painkiller? Is it a vitamin? Is it nice to have, or is it an actual problem people are going through and are facing and are willing to pay money to stop or to gently solve this problem? A question somebody asked me was, so if your business is not there, would people suffer without your business, or would they live life business as usual? And the plan is to get to where people depend on your business. If there's no banking infrastructure, people cannot send money. Now, that taps into healthcare, that taps into real estate, it taps into a whole lot of things. So these are problems people are solving: environmental, other alternative sources of energy, all these themes, right? But your product must be innovative in the market. And as a founder, people say what investors back products, or they back investment material type pitch decks, but ultimately they back the founder. They get a read of the founder, the level of excitement he has, the level of grit he's been through. If at some point you sold your car to fund something, say it, let them know how much belief you have in this, for them to be able to back you to do it, because they're also competing amongst other investors as well. Everybody wants to back the best founder and get a return on their fund. Realistically, nobody's out here giving money because, there are all themes to it. We have to return a fund, you have to do this, you have to do that. So as a founder yourself, you position yourself as a founder, talk about your challenges, be honest about it, be transparent. And the best part about it is always show that you're moving. I call it crying in the rain. When it's raining, you can go outside and cry, lament everything. But then when the sun comes out, you're smiling. Always show that you are moving, your business is growing, and you have a good handle on your money. You know what money comes in, you know where the money goes out. And this feeds into your personal life as well. You should always have a good hold on your money. Lord knows I don't have a very good hold on my money, which is why entrepreneurship is mad respect to everybody who's a founder here. It's not easy to track every dollar that comes into your business. Contingencies come in, family issues come in, personal problems come in, but you have to keep a handle on everything, and make sure your business model, as attractive as it looks, is actually working. It's churning money. It's showing growth. It's showing projection. And as a founder, you have to be competitive. Your business has to be competitive. You're dealing with everybody who thinks they have the best solution. Why are you the best person to back in a particular market? And for example, how big is this market anyway? How much opportunity is there? If I take 10% of the e-commerce market, for example, how much money do I stand to gain? If I become a bit more conservative, 2%, how much am I standing to gain in that regard as well? And then in as much as you're trying, you're pushing, you are also aiming for your product market fit. Yeah? Okay. So now we just dive into what I call a cheat sheet. Just a few points here and there. And I've tried to keep this as conversational, so does it look like a lecture? I wouldn't sit through any of those boring sessions, so I would expect you to sit through mine if it's not as engaging or not as practical to you. I've put them in just a few lines. The first is for me to lead with execution, and not just vision. In a normal balance, it's not just about the vibes and the promise. You have to prove something. You have to show you've built something, or you're building something. You have to show, okay, this is the plan I have. I joined this accelerator. We are building ABC products. We've done prototype testing A, and this is all for pre-revenue. Post-revenue, we've hit the market. We have about 20 customers. So for example, the vision is we plan to hit 10K users in 6 months. If I were talking to an investor, for example, I wouldn't say we just plan to hit 10K users in 6 months, give us $1 million, and we'll get that done. I say we've grown from 40 to 200 paying users in about 90 days with just about $200 in ad spend. So now, imagine we get 10K and we apportion 10% of that, which is about $1,000 in ad spend. In 6 months, we want to hit this 10K users. You feel the difference? There's a tweak to it. You don't have to take and throw everything away. Just tweak it a little bit and show that you're actually moving, even as you're waiting for capital, which was the previous point. Build as if no one is going to fund you. And then the next is to show financial discipline, be on top of your numbers. There are deals that fall through, or because the founder said his GMV was equal to his revenue, but it wasn't the same thing. Yeah, you have to be on top of your numbers. You have to show that level of discipline and stretch your runway as much as you can. You can't be on a $50,000 check every month when your business is pre-revenue, for example. You have to show that you're being scrappy. You're ready to fight it out in the market as you achieve this product market fit. And yeah, don't just talk runway, talk about velocity. So we plan to raise $1 million for 24 months of runway. And what happens in those 24 months, hopefully you're not using that money just to survive for 24 months. You're saying we need that money to unlock a certain part of the market. We've tapped into this part. We've got this level of traction there. We need this to tap into another part and unlock the full spectrum of a whole suite of services. This is me just spitballing. I don't know the different use cases for every business, but generally just try to make it as, speed plus distance, and then, yeah, clean up before you show up. You need to have a paper trail of a lot of things. Your data room has to be pristine. I wouldn't say pristine. Pristine is just overarching it a bit. You have to have a decent data room. You must have a data room with your financials. You must have with your licenses, with your regulatory papers, incorporation docs, registration docs, among other things, just to show that this is what the business is. This is our intellectual property document. These are our contracts with our staff. These are the clauses in those contracts so that they don't steal maybe IP to go and set up their own businesses, because investors want to be protected as well. And then always remember that the hustle always overcomes the hype. The hype you would burn quickly, but then as you're gritting, as you're on the market, as you're fighting it out, you'd realize you have the longevity. You don't burn out just like that. You push, you drive, and over the long stretch, your business will get to where you want it to get to, and you're able to attract that funding once you get there. And for me, I always say, make it easy to say yes. So investor will be looking for example, I need more data on how you're going to use the funds. You have a use of funds document waiting for him or her. I need to know, what kind of pipeline are you working with? You have a pipeline document of companies you are talking to or have spoken to, feedback from them, how you're working towards the next 50 clients, for example, B2B clients. These are all tips that give you the edge in competing with other players or in other markets with other players. And think and speak like the lead investor. If you were the one cutting a check for the 500 out of that 1 million, what would you look for? And you think through that, and then you prepare in advance for that. Because in as much as you are early, maybe pre-revenue, pre-MVP, for example, pre-seed, etc., these things are all very helpful to have in just conversing with founders. They need to know you're not thinking about the business today. Your mind is like, in the next 5 years, we are disrupting the whole edtech space, for example. Schools are going to need us to run courses. Not just schools, young people are going to be depending on us to teach them how to upscale, to become the next big, So all these are themes. They need to know you're thinking long-term, and these are the things I need to get to long-term. So as the lead investor, you're thinking about all these things as well. And this stops saying we just need capital, feeds into the previous point where it's not just we need money, because that makes it look like you are surviving. You might be surviving on the realest of reals notes. You might just be clinging on, you have like 3 months of runway left and you don't know how you're going to cut it, but you can't make it look like that. You have to show that when I get this money, I'm going to do ABC. We don't just need money to extend the runway. Realistically, you do, but you need money to do ABC. And when you get that money, you do ABC. It doesn't mean when you get it, then you pay yourself triple salaries and still run the money to the ground. That's not the way to go, because you have such a big impact on the whole ecosystem. It's crazy. One business could fold and capital could squeeze just like that. The impact you have on this ecosystem. So a lot rides on your shoulders. which is not an easy thing, but you have to push through. And always remember, the goal is not the round. It's easy to get lost in fundraising, talking to investors. I think I mentioned over 500 investors. It's a very exhausting task, but then you have to keep building the business. You speak to 5, you still build a business simultaneously. You should have a team around you helping to keep the lights on, helping to increase that level of traction, because the more investors you talk to, you have to be proving. Imagine you spend about 2 years fundraising. You can't say you've done 2 years and not done anything in 2 years because you're just waiting for money. They want to feel that momentum. In these 2 years, we've done ABC, we've increased our client retention. Our churn has gone to 99%. Sorry, our churn is way lower than that. We've increased revenue by 50%, even as we are bootstrapping. These are themes, and then in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, so if I just add this level of money, it might click, and then they might scale fast enough. Always think about the commercial side to the investor as well. And micro wins. Just this morning, I got a message from somebody saying we got invested by Plug and Play and Visa because they were at the GITEX recently, I think yesterday. So he's trying to create a fear of missing out, because I looked at this deal last year. It didn't cut it for us, but then he's creating that anticipation. Okay, so Plug and Play has invested in them. What exactly did they see that nobody saw? Should I have another conversation with the founder? So create this level of environment, because fundraising is not, I spoke to this person, it's done. You can come back again. They could come to you again multiple times in about multiple years, just tracking your traction, tracking different things. And once it hits their sweet spot, the money is dispersed, And yeah, so that for me is my founder cheat sheet. It's easy to get lost in it, but just try to keep it as practical, fingertips things where when you're sitting down, they just come to you, they flow to you. And then, yeah, hopefully it would make sense as you're fundraising. If you're fundraising now, I should keep fundraising. If you're about to, it will be very helpful as well to know. So yeah, investor relations, for me, it's an art. It's exhausting, first of all, and you have to manage it like a sales funnel. I always say you have to track everything. I spoke to 10 investors. This is what they said. This is the feedback I got. How am I going to add this feedback to what I have? All these things you have to, and then how am I going to tailor the story? So it's all about the story. Means you have to tailor the right message to the right funder. DFI, impact, private equity, commercial, VC, speed, scalability. How do you tweak all these different things? You don't change your business, same value proposition. Just tweak it a little bit. I should go along. I should talk to them. And then it's obvious, many would ghost you. I should go along this journey. You speak to 10 investors, and none of them reach out in about a quarter. It's fine. It's fine. You could always reach out back to them and give them a bit of pressure. They could reach back out to you, but it's fine. You don't take it personally. It could be different things, but you try as much as possible to keep building as if the money is not coming. And then eventually when it does come, you know it has come, essentially. And yeah, I just wanted to pick an example from Cellulant. For those who are familiar with Cellulant, I wouldn't have to talk much then, but I'm talking for those who aren't familiar with Cellulant, the payment processor, banking infrastructure. They went from ringtones to one of Africa's robust mobile banking services. And I picked them as a very good, almost case study type, just for us to see how they navigated, their fundraising. And their story is super interesting. It's very public as well. So for those who are interested, you could pretty much just go on and find that data and see how they actually started and how they got to where they are now. So yeah, so they started way early in the 2000s. I don't know what we were doing in 2000s. Building businesses, maybe others were schooling, different things were happening in those times. But the fun fact was there was not a lot of VC money. If you remember the Brighter Bridges graph, it was very dry along those times. There was no Y Combinator, there was no, we have this $1 billion valuation where it's a unicorn. It's just like people building businesses and hoping to succeed in those businesses. And Cellulant for me embodies what it means to actually grow, pivot, and raise capital when the funding climate was pretty cold at the time. So yeah, you move into their growth. I think they started out there's a lot of words which I'm hoping to not read. I'm just going to cover high-level summaries, and then we can able to extract the learnings from that as well. So they went from a ringtone service. So you could see the broad focus on tech. They wanted to be a tech or tech-enabled business from the start. So they started with ringtone services. They launched it in Kenya. They partnered with Nation Media or Nation Group. They were able to get access to about 8 million customers. And then they tried expanding. So they did Space Phone way back. I think Space Phone eventually became Space Phone Ariba. There were a lot of acquisitions back then as well. Expanded to Ghana with Space Phone. But then the fun part is, in those 3 years, you could see them trying to figure out the market. And with 2003, 2006, they're trying to figure it out. They started, I think, they wrote their business plan on napkin, and then they just launched in the market. And they relied heavily on partnerships because you're trying to expand to 8 million users. How do you do 8 million users without the level of technology we've advanced to right now? I don't think social media marketing was a big thing or was a thing back then. A lot of things were different in those clients. Crowdfunding definitely was not part of that. So they had to push through. And then they launched their first. So they realized the market, they realized the problem was bigger than ringtones at the time. It's not a problem to pivot, which is the whole point of that small blurb. There's not a problem if you want to pivot. Don't get married to one idea. Be open enough to solve a real problem, and you'll be shocked at where the solution could come from. So they launched their banking solution. They tried the USSD. They did offline for banks. Banks were very legacy type back then. So you can imagine the level of traction he got when he was able to prove that his product actually works. And then he able to connect about 35 banks to start, which essentially fed on to multiple businesses or hundreds of businesses, which give them access to about 30 million customers who are constantly moving money in and out of bank accounts, to different bank accounts, to individual bank accounts. So they realized they had found a problem: payments and infrastructure. How do we tap into that? And they pivoted pretty well. I'm looking at how well they did. And then now they've figured it out and they said, okay, now we want to scale. So now they expanded this solution to other wallets, to other countries. Got a lot of awards for it, recognized by London Stock Exchange, among other awards. And then they raised over 40 million in their Series C. Very impressive, because looking at how hard it was to raise, and they eventually got to raise around 2020, between 15 and 2020, raised about a Series C. And they're going strong. There are multiple countries as we speak. They've converged all their payments into a single platform. They have over 200 million users. It could be higher currently. But then, yeah, that's the story for me for Cellulant. It's a very interesting story. There's different stories. There's M-Copper, if you want to dive into other sectors as well, on how M-Copper grew, started from somewhere. And your business could be the next one we look at in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. You could be the next person, the next investor, or the next person is come to talk about how this business grew from point A to point B when there was not a lot of capital, when funding was not as straightforward. You know, it's more about the vision, more about the drive, but how do you get there without slowing down? And yeah, I'm almost wrapping up. Thank goodness. Hopefully you don't kill me for going over time either. I'm just wrapping up with a few key takeaways. And for me, the takeaways are more because I am not really good with TEDx or TED Talk type presentations with, oh, these are the 4 T's to investment success or investment readiness or investment fundraising. If you do these 4 T's, for example, you'll be successful. What are these 4 T's? Traction, team. I'm not good with that. It's the startup or the stone ones. I could do all the 4 T's and have 10 more T's I have to think about, you know. And based on my experience with talking with founders and ESOs and such, you realize from the outside it looks a bit simpler if they do this, if you just do this, if you just do that. But realities are very different. You have to be stuck in the weeds with them to understand what it actually takes to even keep the lights on for a business. Because as I'm talking right now, somebody's thinking about how he or she's going to pay their monthly salaries and taxes and PAYE and SNPs. And these are very real problems real people are facing. But I've just put together a few things which I feel we can take away from this as we go and as we hopefully wrap up this session. Not every capital is the right capital. So you can't accept any level of capital just because it's money coming and you need money for ABC. It's the long-term future of your business depends on it. You have to find one that fits your stage, and you work with it. So you think around that, look at yourself inward first, and then you project outward. Your startup isn't your baby. It's a tool to solve a problem and to generate cash or to generate impact, depending on where you're standing and where you're trying to sell. You need to detach emotionally from it. And then when it's time to pivot, for example, cellular, when it's time to pivot from ringtone, you're not too scared about pivoting from ringtones. You know you want to solve a real problem. You saw a problem in the market, which was payment solutions and banking infrastructure. If you have the capabilities and you can go for it and the market is waiting for you, don't get wedded to one idea. Be ready to pivot. Startups pivot all the time. It's not new. It's not unheard of. You are figuring it out, and it's fine if you figure it out. Just as a founder, don't slow down, don't stop. You know, and also not raising immediately or within your big plan. I plan to raise $2 million in 6 months. By June, I should have raised half of that. Not raising within that period doesn't mean you won't raise. It's easy to lose hope when things don't go to plan. You plan a whole trip, for example, and things just don't work out. It starts raining. It's a very annoying feeling, and most things are not even your fault. It's just the market deciding different things. But my advice is to always keep building. You build, you measure, you learn, and then you repeat. So you just keep the whole loop going. Every time you hit the market, you take some learnings from that. You come again, hit the market, take some learnings from that. And remember, African fundraisers or African businesses, in my opinion, you don't get the luxury of just building, where I want to sit down and build the next Google and just do that. I just want to focus on building. You have to be in the market. You have to be making some level of revenue. You have to be talking to customers. You have to sell the product as you're building. You have to hire people. You have to sadly fire a few people as well. You are still figuring it out on the market. You're still finding out where you fit in and where your business fits in. And it's important for you to never lose track of that. Those are your fundamentals as a founder. Fundraising is fantastic, but always maintain those fundamentals. And valuation. I'm sure when I said valuation, everybody's like, yeah, valuation, man. Yeah, valuation. You have to be as realistic with your valuation. This is just coming from me personally to you. You don't want to overestimate yourself and scare away people, but you don't want to underhand yourself the best benefits ever. You know, maybe your business is actually worth what you say is worth, so you don't want to underprice it. That is fine. But then I always say the market will determine everything. Depending on the market you find yourself in, by market, industry you're operating, funding life cycle, investor types in your market, it will balance it out. Like it will balance itself out easily. It's economics. Just leave the invisible hand, allow the private sector to do its thing. Eventually, the market will balance it. And don't look at others and assume if they could raise 20 million, why can't I raise 10 million, for example? Valuation envy will kill your business because now you raise that money at that valuation. You have to, what they call it is you have to grow into that valuation. So you see your business is worth 50 million. You have to grow into that 50 million before you run out of money, because then you don't want your investors to raise a down round where the value of their business or the value of their shares in the company have reduced. That's not a good look for you as a founder. So what I say is you raise to what you need, hit that milestone, hit that metric, raise again. You hit that milestone, raise just what you need. It's pretty much the summary of it. If you need 50K to do 10K users to get to ARPU, average revenue per user, of what, $20, but you are doing 10K users, so that's 20 monthly recurring, hit that milestone, and then you're like, okay, fine, I've hit this milestone. I want to hit Togo and occupy the market. There's nobody there. I want the first mover advantage and I want to hit it fast. I need 500K. You build 500K, hit those milestones, and just take what you need and scale. You don't need that level of pressure of somebody's 20 million burning holes in your bank account, and they frustrate you because they expected you to grow as fast as you said you could. You said the market was ABC. What's not happening? ABC. Investors, different profiles of investors. You have to find the right one that fits your business, and it's money. Once money comes in, it's a very tricky game to play. And always remember, founders in, I think somebody mentioned about Francophone Africa, founders in Nairobi, Lagos, Togo, Accra, Cairo are competing for the same capital. We had about a little over $2 billion or almost $3 billion coming into the continent. It's a tough market out there. People are still competing across the board. Morocco is still trying to pull deals. Kenya is trying to pull deals. You have to try as much as possible to make yourself as attractive as possible. And it comes back to the Champions League setup again. It's different champions from different regions, but you have to start out as a local champion, and then you fancy yourself, on the international stage where you can compete against these guys and attract funding to your business. And the whole invisible hand theory works. That you hire people, your economy does better. Now you transform, the small corner you found yourself in, and eventually transform the continent. And another thing, coming from somebody who's pretty commercial, is impact alone will not get you funded. Commercial potential is pretty much the entry ticket. Impact will just help you keep maybe the lights on, keep your runway longer. Grants right now are a bit more competitive because the whole landscape is changing, and you now have to compete harder for grants. They take longer. They're a bit vague in terms of whether you qualify or do not qualify. So you have to girdle up your loins. You have to be ready for that stretch. But then you don't depend on just impact funding to keep your business rapidly scaling or rapidly growing. And your first check is probably your most important check. The first person who backs you is going to give validation to everybody else who wants to back you. So you work hard to get that first check, no matter how small it is. Just show that people are willing to take a bet on you, and others just might. Like the guy who was creating the FOMO this morning, Plug and Play invested, ABC also invested, might have been his first check, and struggle so hard to get it. So now other investors look at it and be like, okay, so if they can invest, I think I should look at this deal a bit more. It's a very tricky space. You could see a founder tell you he's spoken to 100 investors, none of them got traction. One investor gave him 50K, and then all of a sudden these 100 people are coming back. It's I know it's as crazy as it sounds. And once again, be on top of your numbers, and always remember that people talk. As a founder, word gets around very fast. I've seen this, businesses, founders having scandals, scarring the business. Just remember that people talk, and your reputation precedes you. In whatever you do, personally, professionally, just be a good person. I always tell people, just be a decent human being. If anybody wants to come at you, just cover your tracks. Make sure you are covered on all sides. Just be decent in your endeavors. Business is ruthless. Be as ruthless as you need to be, but be as ethical as possible as well. And yeah, be honest. You can't keep lying as well, because at some point you might believe the lie. Your numbers will go all out of whack. It's a whole thing. People can cut through, excuse my French, people can cut through the bullshit, and they can tell, they can tell if you're actually worth that salt you seem to say you have, or you seem to say you are. And then, yeah, as a founder, your product is, for me, is your foot through the door, but eventually it comes back to you. What kind of person is this? What kind of person are we backing? Is he or she looking to actually scale? Is he ambitious enough? Are you driven? Are you prudent? Are you scrappy? And yeah, all these things feed into the narrative of the perfect founder. There's no perfect founder, but there's a narrative. And I feel like we should all be on the good side of any narrative. As much as narratives change, always be on the good side of everyone. Be a hardworking founder, be a founder who's not ready to get his hands dirty, multiple hats, all these kind of things. Ready to, scar the armor, get out with a lot of scars and bruising. I'm not saying go out and fight people on the street and get scars, very proverbial. But I feel like with all these tips, you should be out there. If you're looking for funding, you should be out there looking for funding from the right people. And yeah, hopefully we get to see a lot of you on very huge platforms, GITEX. You could have AVCA conferences, maybe in Lagos, for example. We want to see a lot of you hitting those milestones you set for yourself and transforming the continent one country at a time. Thank you all for your attention. And yeah, if there are any questions you have, ready to answer them. If there are no questions, then yeah, I just go for lunch. But yeah, if there are any questions you have, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you too for your time, Nick. It's been a pleasure having you with us, sharing tips about fundraising and managing investor Relations. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. You can either raise your hand, unmute, or drop it in the chat. If you are putting your thoughts together, that is okay. You can also send me an email with the questions that you have for Nick, and I'll be happy to pass it on to him so we can address it offline. Can you please share some positive reactions in the chat, how you found the session? You can drop your key takeaways. If there was anything new that you learned from this session as well, please drop it in the chat. Thank you, Ashwin, for all the reactions. We see you. So we'll give you a few minutes to put your thoughts together. Thank you all for sharing your appreciation to Nick and all the other speakers. Okay, it looks like there are no questions. Nick, that might be a sign that you actually nailed it and addressed all the questions before they actually thought about it. So thank you very much for that presentation. You can stop sharing your screen now, please. Okay, so we have come to the end of the MEST Portfolio Unconference 2025. It's been a pleasure having all of you here with us. You are the real MVPs, most valuable players, not minimum viable products. And we truly appreciate you sticking around from the start up until now. As promised, we started strong, we finished strong. Before you go off, we'd just like to share a survey with you. We want to find out how you found this event so that we can improve upon it during our next session. So please don't drop off just yet. On your screen, you should be able to see the questions. So please answer them for us. Thank you. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our speakers, from Ashwin sharing the welcome address, to Dario giving us insights in the ecosystem, Adelaide telling us about how we can supercharge our businesses with AI and automation. Thank you, Fumi, for speaking to us about legal and compliance. And last but not the least, thank you, Nick, for taking us through fundraising and investor relations. Please take a moment to answer the survey that is on your screen. Thank you to everyone that is filling it. Additionally, if you want to send us any qualitative feedback, please send it to my email. I'm just going to drop it in the chat, but it is abena@meltwater.org. If you have any recommendations about future topics that we can address, speakers that we can bring on board, please feel free and email us about it, and we will factor that in while we are planning for the next Unconference. We just give it a few more minutes. Thank you. I see your responses coming through, and I really appreciate it. Just give it a few more minutes. For those who have finished, you can get camera ready. I would like us to take a nice group selfie before we end this call. So if you are not yet camera ready, please use the few minutes while we're waiting for people to fill the survey to get camera ready, and then we can take our screenshot. Okay, I'm just going to give it one more minute. Thank you all for submitting the results of the survey. I'll be ending it in a bit. And then we'll take our group selfie. Yeah. Please turn on your cameras if you are ready for the selfie, and then we will get started. I'm just ending the poll now. Okay. It's nice to see all your cameras on. Good to see you all. Hi, Paulo. Hi, Kosi. Hi, Alfred. Hi, Jesse. Hi, Shugo. Hi, Isaac. Eliza, Shadrach. It's good to see you all. Brakwesi. Brakwesi, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Emmanuel, thank you.
Wow, I haven't been married in so long.
Covet, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so we would do 2 pictures. No, we'll do 3. A nice smiley one, a fun one, and then we'll do our MEST power picture. All right, okay. So let's see some big smiles. 3, 2, 1. How do I? Thank you. Thank you. And then let's do the fun one. So you can do your peace sign, you can do the Gen Z hearts, anything that is fun, you can throw your hands in the air. Let's do that on 3, 2, 1.
Oh, Steven. I haven't seen Steven in so long too.
You've taken them, right, Ashu? Okay, and then we'll do the MEST power picture. All right, so let's get our energy ready. Let's stretch our arms and legs for our speakers. Our MEST power picture is a sign of our unity, our strength, positivity, generosity, standards, all the values that we hold dear to our hearts. And it's really easy to take one. You just flex your muscles, so make a fist, and then you put your arm right in front of you. You just shout MEST power. That's how we take our MEST power picture. Okay, so for this one, I'll pull out my phone so I can do a video of it while we also take our screenshots. Is everyone ready for our MEST power picture? Okay. So on 3, 2, 1, MEST power. Thank you all, everyone. Thank you for joining this call. We'll just leave the Zoom on for a few more minutes in case you want to connect with any of your friends, co-mesters. We'll let you private chat each other for a while, and then I will end the Zoom in about 2 + 5, 7 minutes. So at 15 past the hour, I'll end the Zoom. So feel free to hang around if you want to chat with somebody. If you want to drop off as well, you're more than happy to. Once again, we really value your time. Thank you for staying with us from start to the end. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy your Easter weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.